Support for Champ and the Tramp is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. We have an exclusive offer for our listeners, 20% off free shipping with code CHAMP at manscaped.com. Manscaped hooked me up with a bunch of tools and formulations for their Perfect Package 3.0 kit. Frank, using your old trimmers, probably, I'm assuming, with a wire, probably the same one you use for your face. You got any stories about nicking yourself up?
You know, early in my fighting career, I used to think I needed to shave my whole body.
More aerodynamic?
More aerodynamic, maybe a little less on the scale, and I definitely nicked the nuts a couple times to get in the grundle. Not very pleasant. This, on the other hand, much better.
I mean, think about it from a fighter's point of view. That's an open wound for a staph infection. That's not where you want to get a staph infection.
Exactly. So Manscaped's the way to go.
Good thinking, pal. Good thinking. Manscaped has created the best ball hair trimmer ever, the Lawnmower 3.0. Their third-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. Thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology, I now feel confident shaving my boys. In addition, this trimmer comes with an LED light, which is definitely handy. I've noticed that, for a more precise shave, and is waterproof to make your shave clean and easy. Do you shave in the shower?
I usually do it before the shower.
Yeah, I put a towel down. I don't know. You know what it is? It's like when I'm trying to bend over in the shower and get my grundle, I got the water going in my face. I can't see. I feel like,
You're
I'm
pretty
not
tall too. It's shot right in your face.
I'm not getting everything. So I stand there and kind of like put the leg up, and I do it on a towel. And don't use the same trimmer you use on your face as your balls, obviously. I think that's the old school way of doing it. I think we all used to do that, and then you got the wire and you're getting it all tangled around your legs. The Lawnmower 3.0 comes inside their brand new Perfect Package 3.0, which comes with everything you need to keep trimmed, cut-free, and smelling nice down there. The Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0 also includes the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. You already put deodorant on your armpits. Why aren't you putting deodorant on the smelliest part of your body, especially Frankie? And yes, your balls do stink.
Speaking of sweaty and stinky balls, I am thankful for their Crop Reviver. This product, along with the Crop Preserver, keeps your balls from sweating, smelling, and sticking. No one likes sticky nuts.
No.
Manscaped threw in 2 free gifts into their Perfect Package: a pair of high-performance Manscaped boxer briefs that'll keep your junk feeling fresh all day, and a travel shed bag to store all your grooming goodies. Trim that junk of yours, get 20% off, and plus free shipping with the code CHAMP at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CHAMP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code CHAMP. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Real show, here we go. Real show, here we go. You know that it's gotta be that time, so this is what we chant. What keeps on getting them all amped in advance? Come on. You were not rocking out with Iron Man, F.E. You get the general's point of view on top of Roger's rants. We're never tapping out, we're putting the most minutes in. You already know what that's about, you know that winners win. Crush whatever's on task, check the podcast. It's the Champ and the Tramp, let the bomb blast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Champ and the Tramp. We have an exciting one for you guys today. Very excited to announce that Errol Doebler is in the house. For those of you that don't know who Errol is, he is a former Navy SEAL member, SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 4, correct?
That's correct.
Had an injury which took him out of the SEALs. He then signed up for a career with the FBI. Served 13 years with the FBI. Did some overseas stuff, working with. You were part of the terrorist task force.
Yeah, I worked counterterrorism operations, and then did some stuff in Afghanistan with the 75th Ranger Regiment. Yeah.
And then left there after a illustrious career of 13 years, and decided to start his own leadership consulting firm. And he has written the book, The Process, Art, and Science of Leadership. So we're very excited today to welcome Errol into the podcast room. Thank you, brother.
I appreciate it, boys. Thanks for having me.
Definitely love to pick your brain on some of these things.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it. I have a question, though. Do do you ever start an episode and not say we've got a real exciting one for you?
I usually don't. Honestly, I usually don't say that. To be honest with you, I usually don't. So.
All right, cool.
Yeah, no, that was genuine.
All right, I appreciate it. No, it's really great to be here. And like we were saying, the friend of ours, Larry, hooked us up and kind of felt like he put the gun to your head, like, yeah,
not at all, man.
Meet Errol. He would get him on the podcast.
Someone with your background is definitely someone that we would love to talk to down here. So it's good to have you. And so you went? How did you know you were going to be a military person?
You know, I didn't. I didn't really grow up in a military family. Like, you know, my dad got enlisted or he got drafted, you know, in between wars. He liked the military. My uncle was in the military for a while, but it wasn't like a military family, you know. And my next door neighbors went to the Naval Academy, and I don't know, I must have been about 12 years old or something. They bought over a pamphlet. I just started looking through it. And, you know, it was cool, right? Every kid likes guns and soldiers and stuff like that. But then there was this one section that said SEAL teams. Now, again, this is back in the early 80s, right? So nobody even knows what this is. You don't go to the internet. And it was a very nebulous paragraph on what they did. They didn't even have cool gear on. They had just shorts and, you know. But I was like, who are these guys? What? Why aren't they saying what they, you know? So that always stuck with me. Fast forward to high school, you know, I played sports. Lacrosse was my main sport that I would get recruited for, but I talked to my coach and, you know, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to go to school, man. I just don't know. And he goes, where do you want to go to school? And I'm like, the Naval Academy? It just fell out of my mouth. And the coach came and he looked at me and he said, we'll get you into the prep school because my grades, you know, they weren't good enough to get straight in. And then once I got there, I kind of remembered, that's right, the SEAL team thing. So, you know, I didn't go there for the reason that a lot of people go there. I just went there because, Navy had a great lacrosse team. I played lacrosse, and it just popped into my head. But then everything kind of resurrected.
I forget the technical name, but you started out as a boat pilot, essentially, right?
Well, so when I graduated, right, you go into the fleet, the regular Navy, and I didn't go right to the SEAL teams. I was what's called a surface warfare officer. Yes. I was on a ship. I was on an oiler. And that was a bummer, man, because if you want to be a SEAL and then you end up on a ship and an oiler, it's pretty low grade. But, you know, these people come in and out of your lives for reasons. And I remember I picked so late in the class, right? You pick by class standing, right? And I think I was like 10 from the bottom. And so there's hardly anything on the board to pick because everything's gone. As a matter of fact, they had a party for us, right? And by the time I got to the party, not only was the party over, they had already cleaned up and put everything away. So I was staring at the board and just dejected. And, you know, one of the officers came over who worked there, you know, what's wrong and all that. And I'm like, you know, and I told him. And he goes, okay, that's the ship you want to go to. And I said, all right, why? He goes, because that ship is out at sea all the time. And I'm like, man, I don't think you heard me. I don't want to be on a ship out to sea all the time. And he said, if you want to be a Navy SEAL, you have to get on a ship, get your qualifications on that ship, right, to become a surface warfare officer. You have to be out at sea all the time, and you have to get your qualifications twice as fast as everybody else. And I was like, all right, man, I got it. And that was the best piece of advice I ever got. So I got on the ship. I, you know, kicked ass, I guess. Got my qualifications. There was like 30 guys who asked for a lateral transfer over to the SEAL teams. And they were picking one, and they picked me. And that I don't, you know, who knows how that happens. What is the
percentage? I know it's extremely low for the people that try out for, you know, the SEALs that actually make it through. It's a
70% attrition rate. So,
is that what it is?
Yeah, so 30% make.
So how does you join the Navy, and then can you right away as you join the Navy, can you say I want to be a SEAL?
No, not as an officer. Because in the SEAL teams, so in a typical platoon, there's 16 guys in a platoon. And only 2 of them will be officers, right? So there's not as much need for officers. Now, if you're going in as an enlisted guy, you can now go in and say, I want to go to BUDS right away, and they'll just send you because they just need bodies going through because the attrition rate's so high. But for the officers, it's much more competitive. So that year that I graduated, they only had 8 billets that they were going to allow people to go to the SEALs, right? And that's not a lot. So yeah, no, you have to get. There's a whole rigmarole of things to go through if you're going to be an officer in the SEAL teams, because there's just not as many.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys, a little off topic here, but you guys have a similar story. You know, reading. I didn't get through your whole book, but I read a good portion of it. Your story about skydiving and how you took all the classes and you were so confident and you jumped and you forgot everything. Errol, I saw in your book you have a very similar story to that.
Yeah.
And they almost booted you out. You had to repack your chute in 20 minutes and go right back up.
Yeah, man. So I use that story as part of the book and talk about emotions and how important emotions are and acknowledging them, especially in leadership. Because if we don't, they'll just wreak havoc on you, right? If you're pretending you're not feeling something, you'll just have an action that's kind of random.
Or an inaction.
Right? So as the case may be. So same thing, they bring us through the school. It's generally speaking pretty easy conceptually, right? They put you in the wind tunnel. They teach you how to
his story,
they teach you how to float. Okay, I got that, right? Check right, check left, up, down, check your altimeter, pull. It's not that complicated. And I just remember all sorts of bravado walking up to the plane, right? Making jokes, right? Had to be cool guy. Because it wasn't all SEALs, right? So anytime you go somewhere and you're a SEAL, everybody's got an eye on you.
Yeah.
So I was laughing and joking the whole time, jumped out, and the next thing I remember is the instructor because an instructor jumps with you, reaching over to pull my ripcord for me. I had blown through all the protocols, went below the altitude that we were supposed to pull. He was just going to pull it. I finally caught myself and pulled, didn't do any of the protocol, look right, just about the most unsafe jump you could ever have. We get to the ground and the instructor was super cool, just calm. He's like, hey, Lieutenant, you have another jump like that, I'll make sure you never step foot on an airplane again. All right, you have 20 minutes, pack up for the next jump. I'm a Navy SEAL, sea, air, and land soldier. You can't do your job if you can't jump out of an airplane, right? So, I had to. It was a come to Jesus moment, right? I was like, okay, I've got 20 minutes to save my career. What am I going to do? And the first thing I had to do was acknowledge I was scared shitless of jumping out of the airplane. So I just kind of acknowledged that. I'm like, okay, I'm really afraid of this. And then all of a sudden, it was like, okay, now I get to make some choices. I cannot do it, which is fine. You can make a conscious choice. I'm just not going to do it. That wasn't obviously going to be my choice. But it was, okay, well, what do I do now? Well, focus on the things that they taught you. And if you get scared, just acknowledge the fear, but then refocus yourself, right? So that's why I tell the story, right? It's just around the importance of emotions, and people don't acknowledge them. And then they wonder why they do the things they do. Right. So that's just a story to say, look, and if your random action is inaction, well, that's a bad draw for jumping out of an airplane, right? So.
I would say for what I've read thus far, the very core of your book is how integral emotion is attached to leadership, good leadership. Yeah. You know what I mean? And being able to control that emotion. And that's something that I definitely have battled with my whole life is, anxiety and just emotional distress and how it has, made some poor decisions in my life, so.
Yeah. It's the driver to everything. And people get a little surprised when they start working with me, when they hear me on these things and, with the background, and I'm talking about emotions. But, if everybody takes a step back, everybody will agree. There's nothing to disagree about. Yeah. If you don't understand your emotions, if you don't have an awareness of them, you're going to make random decisions, right? And they're probably going to be bad random decisions. And now all of a sudden you're getting into this cycle, right? Because now your brain's rewiring itself towards that behavior based on that emotion, blah, 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 and on it goes.
You talk about that. There's a sequence.
There's absolutely a sequence, right? There's, the book is the process, art, and science, and that's kind of the science portion. We become addicted to these emotions and the actions they drive, right? Literally, when you have an emotion, the brain sends a chemical to the body, right? Now you are thinking, you're feeling as you're thinking, and you have an action based on that emotion. Now your brain's starting to wire itself in that way, okay? Now you're going to do that action, but eventually you're going to forget why you're doing that action, right? Fucking Frankie made me so mad. Why are you so mad? Well, because Frankie said this to me, right? Then a week later you see me. What are you so mad about?
Right.
didn't I tell you what Frankie said? Then 6 months later, right?
Remember.
And then I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
why I'm so mad. But what I do know is I've got to find something in my environment to justify my anger, because now I'm addicted to that emotion.
Correct, yep.
And that's the way it works.
Yep.
So we have these subconscious behaviors. So yeah, that's kind of the thing around emotions. I'm
Yeah.
pretty big on it. And when I work with people, sometimes it's mostly the guys. There's some guys who call me and they're like, I had to look up emotion in the dictionary. I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
And my point is, you don't need to know what it means. This is just lets you know how little regard you give it,
Right.
that you had to go look it up.
Right.
So
I always say you want to be emotionless fighting too. You know, you want to be like I had a couple buddies that are gotten some stare downs with guys, and they were like, I could tell it affected them. I'm like, dude, what? Don't let this affect you, man. I'm gonna be like an assassin. You know, no, you got nothing in the game. No, you know, you're not leaving your soul out in the game. It's just
In your line of work,
you want to just be
I would think
focused.
that it's super important to be able to control your
Yeah,
emotions.
I mean,
you know?
I think you could use your emotion too. You know, like
100%.
you're Rocky, Frankie Fear. You know, Frankie, you got Frankie Fear, and then you use that and help to motivate you or whatever. But I think when you have the wrong, like negative emotions, that's when you can get mad in a fight and you start picking your chin up and trying to hit a guy real hard. That's you get caught. You know.
Right.
But to your point, the reason you're even able to say this stuff, Frankie, is that you're aware of it. Right?
Yeah.
Look, I don't know anything about walking into a UFC ring, but I can't imagine that you don't have some type of fear of butterflies when you're walking.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, how can you not? It doesn't matter how many times I've been in a combat situation, you're going to get those, but the ones who recognize and go, okay, yeah, I'm scared right now. Cool. What now?
Yeah. Right.
What next? Because if we start telling people you're not allowed to be afraid, you're not allowed to be angry, that's not going to cut it.
Right.
Because now they're feeling guilty because like, oh, I'm afraid, but I can't admit it. Right? You're so advanced at that. Like your advice to them is, no, you can't be emotional about it. Really, what you're saying is,
Right.
you have to get that under control, recognize it, and then make a decision how you want to act.
Right.
I always tell my kids, the hero and the coward, they feel the same exact thing.
Feel the same exact thing.
They just react a different way.
That's right, because the coward isn't aware of his emotions, so he just acts randomly.
Right.
Because a coward doesn't make conscious decisions, right? That's what emotions do to cowards. Like, I'm afraid, and now I'm just going to go on my instinct and run away. As opposed to, you tell me if I'm a coward, like, I'm really afraid right now, and my best move is to roll out of here. That's more logical than fear-based, right? Like, no, I'm not a coward. This is no good for me. I'm gonna this whole situation is no good. I'm out. That's the best conscious decision.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I saw something else, you talked about in your book, which I think in the world we live in today, in the society that we're in today, and especially with COVID going on, that you wrote something like 95% of people that walk through the doors of a medical, building
yep.
are in there for stress-related
Yeah.
issues.
Yep.
And, only 5% really know how to control that and deal with that. And I think in the world we live in, can you speak to that a little bit
Yeah.
more? Because there is so much stress
Yeah.
in today's day and age. And there's not a lot of light at the end of the tunnel right now either, by the look of it.
No, there's not. It's getting worse. As a matter of fact, we're not in a better spot than we were a year ago.
Right.
I think we're worse.
Right,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, right.
But that stat that's based on true genetic disorders, right? 5% of the people in the world have a true genetic malady, okay? 95% of the people who are walking to health clinics are walking in there for some stress-related incident. Okay, now, what does that mean? I've got type 2 diabetes. What does that have to do with stress? That has everything to do with stress, okay? Because when you're overstressed, you get all the inflammation in your body. And inflammation, when it becomes chronic, has now been shown to be the key driver in every major disease we live with right now, right? Cancer, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, Parkinson's, all that stuff. So, you hear people who run marathons and eat right and all this thing, and the next thing you know, they come down with cancer. Like, oh, okay, Mr. Exercise, Mr. and Mrs. Exercise people, what's the deal with that? Well, the deal is that you can't out-eat the stress. You can't outrun the stress. The stress keeps rolling in, okay, and that's where it's going to take shape. So when we talk about this fear that we're living under right now, okay, the stress, that's why people are getting sicker and sicker during this last year, because we have just loaded the stress on ourselves. Oh my God, the COVID and, you know, whatever else. We can't go outside. Now my kids are home, and now I'm home all the time with my spouse, and the stress just keeps on coming. And that's what it is. So once again, emotions based on, you know, the stressors. Another stat, you know, and I'm throwing out stats like I'm some scientist, but you know, I wrote the book because the stats were interesting. We have between 60 and 70,000 thoughts a day. 80 to 90% of those thoughts.
Here we go.
But now 80 to 90% of those are the same as the day before.
Right.
Wow.
I read that.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, further that, for the majority of the people, at least maybe in this study, so over 50% of the people, 70% of the time, those emotions they had were related to stress.
They're stressors, yeah.
Like
you hold on to those.
You just, and then we just keep going and
Recycle,
going and going.
yeah.
So even if you only have 10 thoughts a day, Frankie, right? That's 60 to 70,000, right? 80 to 90% are the same as the day before. And we wonder why we keep doing the same nonsense over and over again, and how we start getting sick.
Yeah.
And that's it.
How do you break that cycle?
Well, again, the process is simple. It starts with the awareness.
Part, right?
It starts with the awareness. You have to be aware of that stuff.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of how you feel and what you do, right? You got to be able to say, all right, I'm feeling these ways. Now I've got to be conscious of how I'm acting on them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge. And then all of a sudden you're super conscious and you go upstairs and you bark at your wife for no good reason. You're like, ooh, right? And then your kids are being 6 and then you bark at them. And then somebody else in your family's trying to talk to you and you're staring at the TV going, yeah, cool, right? All of a sudden you're realizing the things you're doing. And now you put that together with the emotion. Now you've got a picture, right? Now you've got a picture. You say, wow, I don't really like what I see based on how I feel. And now you've got to make some decisions, right? Now you've got to decide, what is the behavior I want? What's 1 or 2 things that I can work on? Maybe it's being in the moment, right? Anytime somebody in my family talks to me, I'm going to stop what I'm doing, turn. Whatever it is, it takes hard work, but that gives you the ability to at least start making decisions, as opposed to just doing this rote behavior that's kind of screwed up most of the time anyway. So that's where it starts. Not easy, but you know, I like to tell the people I work with, neat and tidy is not the goal. Mission accomplishment's the goal.
Yeah, I like
so
that.
Get ready for a hard road, but that's still the road that you need to travel, and that's where it starts.
Yeah. You kind of worked it out with a 5-part system, really.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that a little bit?
I just walked you through the first 3 stages,
Yeah.
right? Emotional awareness and recognition to cultural awareness and recognition.
Awareness, right.
How you feel, the things you do. Culture is made up of the things we do, not the labels we put on, right? Labels are fine, but you better be able to tell me what you do to create that label,
Right.
okay? So the first part is all awareness. Then you have to decide behavioral guidelines. It's all about behavior, right? If you behaved in a certain way, you'd get better at everything, right? So if I was working with you, Frankie, I would never tell you, you know, you need to go for those singles more, right? That's a widget. That has nothing to do with leadership. It would be all about behaviors. If you were doing something in the ring, I don't even need to understand anything. I would just be like, well, what's the decision-making process around that? How do you want to behave, right? You said it, right? You get all angry in the ring and you start to, and then you get caught. My thing would be, well, where's the source of that coming from? Do you even notice it? And then how do you want to act when you get angry? Right? Your answer would probably be, I need to calm down. Right? Cool. Now you have a behavior to focus on that's going to make you a better fighter that has nothing to do with fighting. Okay? So that's the first 3. Those are the first 3 areas. In the end, though, leaders get, stuff done, right? And the reason people don't get stuff done is because they don't know how to plan. They don't know how to make a plan. So all I did was take our planning process from the SEAL teams, watered it down and modified it a little bit. And the point I make to people is, in combat, if you do things wrong from a leadership perspective, you've got 1 or 3 outcomes: mission failure, injury, or death. Okay? The good news is, though, the elements of the proper plan to keep people alive and then achieve victory are transferable everywhere. It's the same stuff, right? It doesn't matter if you're fighting. It doesn't matter if you're in banking. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher. It doesn't matter if you're a stay-home parent. It's all the same, right? Something's happening. I need to make a plan to make sure I get the outcome I want. Identifying the situation, identifying the mission, identifying your actions. I could go through it, but that's it. That's it. So, I just finished with a group today, as a matter of fact, right? And we're at the end, and I say, look, it always takes everybody about 4 weeks, 5 weeks to put this whole piece together, this whole thing. And I say, if you look at it, what I just described to you happens everywhere. When, I used to get a lot of engagements right when COVID started. Hey, Errol, teach us how to lead through, challenging times, which was great. I always appreciated it. But my answer was always, if you have to change things really precipitously, then you're doing things wrong anyway.
Probably wasn't the right to begin with.
It wasn't right to begin with. Okay, so what's the things that always happen, right? Oh my God, COVID. Okay, I'm the big boss. What's the first thing I'm looking at? How's everybody reacting? What are their emotions? Are they getting crazy and out of control? Now I see it. Emotional awareness and recognition. What are they doing based on that? They're losing their minds. They're running around yelling at people. They're calling, right? Is that what I want them to be doing? Is that really our culture that we established? If it is, if it's not, what is the behaviors we've established? Remind everybody. It's not how we do business here, right? We do it this way. We behave in these ways. So let's all get back on track. Everybody goes, oh, shit, he's right. That's right. That's what we do. Okay? If you need to establish a new behavior because you realize, wow, we don't have them, put it in. It's still a behavioral guideline, that thing you'll hold people accountable to. And now you say, okay, it's really hit the fan. We need to pivot on everything. What's our plan? Those elements never go away. Yeah. Those are the elements. That is the leadership process, at least in my mind. But I haven't had anybody be able to tell me, yeah, everything except for that planning thing. It's just, it's not there. It's what it is. The last part is something I call the resistance. And that's a lot of the science portion behind it, right? Everything I just said to you made perfect sense, right? So let's say me and you were working together. And, nobody's ever said to me again, no, behavioral guidelines are stupid. Everyone's like, yeah, you're right. Or planning is stupid. Yet, you won't plan. Right? We'll go through something, you'll put a plan together, and you won't follow it. Well, what was that? Well, you won't even have an answer because you've been so used to doing things a certain way, right? Just what we talked about. It doesn't even matter if that'll be good for you or not. Yeah. You're just used to the other way. So you'll kind of resist the obvious. That's the resistance. So what I tell leaders is, if you know that there's going to be a natural resistance to things based on you trying to rewire people's brains by changing behaviors, you can just lighten up a little bit, right? I don't have to get all pissed at you when you don't do what I ask that's new. I can be like, well, it's new, right? So I don't have to get all over them. Just have to remind them. So that's the process in a nutshell. That's what now I've built my career on in 5 minutes.
The very opening line in your book is Roger, which is my name. So it kind of caught me, and it was you dealing with a guy at a company who is kind of I guess not implementing what you were trying to teach him, and he was kind of making excuses, and you kind of had to show him the proper way to do it, and so it kind of grabbed me because his name was Roger. I was like, wow, the first line in this book is Roger.
And maybe
this was written to me.
It didn't sound familiar.
It did. It did. There's a lot of things I can learn from this. A lot of things, truly.
No, I appreciate it.
Just about, because I'm an emotional guy, so and controlling emotions has always been a bit of a struggle for me. But something.
Bear. Big
yeah.
Right, they always wants to hug people, right? It's like, get under control, man.
I was reading too, though. You're certified in the Wim Hof method, and I've heard so much about that lady. This guy's big into breathing. Got another friend, Jesse, who's very big into Wim Hof.
I'm big into breathing. Hopefully, you're big into breathing
well, you
too.
Just told you in breathing techniques, I should say. You told me you just read a book the other day about
I did. James Nestor's book.
Yeah. It's fantastic, and it's scary.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Well, it's crazy. It's the stuff that breathing can do for you. All those different exercises and whatnot. I messed around with them a little bit. The box breathing. Breathing is such a big part of fighting and martial arts. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And the cold therapy too.
That's the correlation I was going to bring up. It's really the stress that you're under when you get into an ice cold bath, and it's someone asked you, I saw on a podcast, well, how long do I stay in there? And there's really no definitive answer to that. It's till you find your comfort zone, really, right?
That's right. So, two different discussions. So the Wim Hof, I don't know how familiar you are with Wim Hof.
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty familiar with him.
All right, so that breathing serves a whole different purpose, right? Everything in Nestor's book, spot on, right? Nasal breathing, the whole thing. That's the way we should be going through life. The The Wim Hof method serves...
If you listen to any of our podcasts, Frankie has no issues with nasal breathing.
You get it going, right? So it's so funny because
you hear it now?
We're working on that because my wife read the book first. So when we watch our TV show at night as a family, we're taping all our mouths up, and my son is. So maybe it's just makes me feel at home. But anyway, Wim Hof breathing serves a different purpose, and it kind of goes to COVID. It is what his breathing does is it literally hacks the autonomic nervous system. What do I mean by that? Autonomic nervous system, right? Fight or flight, rest and digest. And autonomic nervous system covers all the functions in our body naturally, to include our innate immune system. All right, so how can you hack something that happens automatically? Well, what happens is when you fill your body full of adrenaline, right, you go into fight or flight, whatever's happening, okay? And then in theory, you are supposed to then release from whatever had you all crazy, go back into your cave, so to speak, and then you go into rest and digest. So the nervous system is working itself, right? It's getting exercise because it's appropriately going to fight or flight, and then it's appropriately coming back. Mm-hmm. Well, what's the problem in today's society? We leave our cave, right? Or the caveman going to get the saber-toothed tiger. Fight or flight, right? Everything is focused on that one thing. He comes back into the cave. Everything's nice and, everybody's relaxing now. We're cooking up the saber-toothed tiger. All's good. Well, what do? We leave our cave, and it doesn't even matter now that we're not leaving our home. Our cave is our home office, whatever it is. We're leaving to go do work, to do whatever it is. Are we ever going back into the cave to go into rest and digest, right? Think about it. People are coming home. What's the first thing they do? Let me just get on the phone, make a few more calls. I'll just do a couple more emails, right? I'll watch the news, God forbid, right? That's not stress yet. Have a couple drinks. We've all been there. None of that stuff, as a matter of fact, it's a fact. That will all keep you in fight or flight. So now we get that chronic inflammation, and now all this stuff is happening. What Wim Hof method does is you voluntarily activate your autonomic nervous system when you do that real heavy breathing, right? Mm-hmm. And then you hold your breath, and now your heart rate goes down. You do that for 20 minutes minimum. Eventually, at about that 20-minute mark, your rest and digest system takes over your fight or flight system, and now you've reset your nervous system. You've exercised, right? It makes perfect sense, right? So what does that mean for us? Well, that means when we do that, we exercise our internal systems, our physiology, so our immune system gets stronger. Why are people dying? People are not dying because COVID virus is this virus that, oh my God, is so different from every other virus.
Comorbidities.
It's a foreign virus, but our immune systems are so weak that our immune systems overreact and people die. Or they have these comorbidities like diabetes or whatever it is because they're inherently unhealthy, and now their immune system is weak, and then they really can't handle it. So the conversation we're not having, and not to get into COVID, but it's important. The conversation we're not having is about people's health.
Yeah, 100%.
No question about that.
We are the heaviest, unhealthiest nation in the world, and we are not talking about people's immune system and strengthening it. So among other things, the Wim Hof method breathing does that.
Yeah.
And if we can talk about it later, I've had some brain scans around heart and brain wavelength and how they're congruent with each other, and it works. And it's the same thing with the ice bath, right? In my mind, when you get into that ice bath, right, you're like that. That's fight or flight. And then if you just get calm, right, and through all the techniques I would teach you, breathing and focusing, all that stuff, all of a sudden your heart rate will go down. You're exercising your immune system. So that's one of the many benefits, right? I use it to help people recognize their emotions, right? Recognize how you're feeling when you get into that ice bath. Now, how do you want to act? Right? How are you acting?
Also, the process of just getting in there and making excuses.
That's
and
right.
Are you a procrastinator? And I read a.
How often do you try to do the ice bath?
Every day.
Do you really?
Every day.
Wow.
Shower, bath?
So mostly bath, right? So we got shower's fine, but I've got a meat freezer that I filled with water, so I'm always at 33 degrees, right? But if you got to clean it, I clean it out once a year, But then when the water's getting cold, to go in the shower. But every day, because I'll tell you what happened when I first started doing the Wim Hof method. I went right into his protocol to get certified, which was the online course, and so you just start doing it. And about a week into it, my wife said, and I had just left the FBI. We had 2 kids at that time, so now we're at one income. She was still at the FBI. She's since left. So it's stressful. Mm. And she was like, I don't know what this thing you're doing is, but you're never allowed to stop. Right? Because
that's the best testament, too.
Yeah, that's it, right? It's just calmer. Yeah. Right? Handling things a little different. So it's like I'm on a monologue here. You guys can go.
This is great. This is right up my alley. I love this stuff.
What I liked about your book too is early on you talk about failures in your life. You talked about having a bad marriage and things like that, and I think that gives you a little more validity, is that you can own that, and you own it very early in the book, and you don't come across as sort of the be all know all, I guess, because you own those right up front, and you face it.
Yeah, that was purposeful for a few reasons. First is I've had so many of those screw ups. You just can't run from them. I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror. And sometimes along the way you make some enemies, right? And I thought to myself, I've got to write this book for any detractor that would come after me. Yeah. Right? Say, oh, he's full of crap because I knew him when he did these things. And I thought, if I'm going to get people to listen to my message, I've got to make sure that stuff gets, I don't give anybody any ammunition. So I'm just going to lay it out there. Yeah. First 5 pages, here it is.
Own those skeletons in your closet.
There it is, just vomited all over the pages. So anybody who wanted to take a shot at me, and call me a hypocrite or whatever, I didn't want to leave them any room. Yeah. And not that anybody would do that. Maybe that was a little paranoid, but that's the comment I get on the book a lot. Yeah. Like, hey, that was cool that you went through.
Well, it makes you human, man. All humans make mistakes. And if it was just a book about all your successes, and you might be a little more suspect to it, I think.
Yeah, I suppose, but yeah. So.
Now, how did you go from SEALs to the FBI?
So I wanted to be a SEAL my entire career. I loved it, right? And I wasn't even a SEAL. I was a SEAL in the 90s, so it wasn't even like we were off in combat all the time. So we were on deployment when I was at SEAL Team 1, and I got injured. We got tasked with an operation. We were going to do a ship takedown, and had 2 days, so we had a day to rehearse. And it was real bad weather, and I took a 30-foot spill from the top of one boat to another. If we have time, I'll tell you the whole story. It's pretty interesting. But anyway, it was enough to get me medically discharged. Now, around that, those vulnerabilities, I had just gotten into that terrible marriage, right? I had a couple of serious head injuries right before that in the SEAL teams. So now I know these things. I may not have been thinking completely straight in some of these decisions I was making. But in any event, it was a tough recovery. I got hooked on the pain meds. So to get off them, was this whole thing. And then to make matters worse, my wife, she knew my weak spot. So, like young couples do, we were just looking for ways to hurt each other. So all she had to do was call the command and be like, Errol's being a jerk or whatever. So I'd get called in, once a day. Finally, like, get your stuff together, man. So the injuries, the embarrassment, maybe not thinking straight. I went to the medical board and they're like, look, we'll let you stay in, but your operating days are gone for the foreseeable future. We don't know if you're going to get function of these injuries. And I just remember any other circumstances, I would have said, yeah, because I think I can come back from this. I just had to get out. Like, your reputation is everything in the SEAL teams. And it was just being trampled. I was embarrassed. And I didn't need to be. It just was something that was happening to me. All I had to do was talk to somebody. But in any event, I took the medical discharge and got on with my life. Started, in hindsight, it was a good thing, right? I kind of had to start sitting back and going, I just left something that I loved. What happened, right? What were those decisions that I made? went into the private sector. I was in sales and sales management. It was cool. And I enjoyed it, right? The money was good. That's when software, everybody. And then I had a meeting, a sales meeting, big sales meeting. We were going to close a multi-million-dollar deal, right, with Con Edison. And that meeting was the morning of September 11th, 2001, right, in Manhattan. So we were downtown when that happened. I was safe. I was like at a hotel, like at the edge of the rubble. You know what I mean? So like it all stopped, and you're like, oh my God. Lost my brother-in-law that day, and that was just a day where I said, I've got to get back in this fight. I don't know how. I don't even know what it looks like. So I applied to all the usual suspects. I went with the FBI, and I got the New York City office, and I got counterterrorism, and it was like, all right, let's get some.
Yeah.
It was.
I think a lot of people were inspired. I mean, Pat Tillman being probably the most notable story. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Me a close second.
Yeah.
But no, that's what happened, and I'll never forget it. When I came off, because I lived in Hoboken, and took the path over right downtown, and that came into the memorial. The memorial had just been built, and it was cool, right? Because I remember thinking, all right, this is it. This is my new life, and I'm gonna get some now, and we're gonna get a little get back, and there it was, the 9/11 memorial. It was just I'll never forget it. It was cool, but anyway, that's the story about how I went there. Yeah.
And when you were with the FBI, you said you did stuff overseas, or was everything mostly in New York?
Well, so I worked counterterrorism. I worked individuals and groups emanating from Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and the former Soviet republics.
Wow.
So think Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all that stuff, right? And so New York is one of the major offices in the FBI. So we have kind of some extraterritorial authority, if you will. So if we can link a group or an individual some way, shape, or form back here to the United States or New York, then we have the authority to go over there and start asking to do work. We got to coordinate with the governments and stuff like that. So I traveled a ton overseas for that stuff, and it was pretty cool because my wife, she was an analyst, and I was the agent. And that's how we met. Wow. And we went to we did a lot of cool things, man. We interviewed some hardened, scary terrorists in some hardened, scary places like those former Soviet republics. We were the first Americans to ever be in this town, and my wife was the first woman to ever step foot in this jail. And these guys, man, they still had the big Soviet green uniforms and the huge hats. And the guards who took us literally what felt like 40 feet down had burlap masks on, like burlap masks, like they cut the eyes out. You couldn't make it up. Dungeon, like the sides of the walls were water coming out of them. And the guy, who we went talk to, he lived in a thing half the size of this, and he was in there forever. And he was a murdering thug, but he talked to us for 8 hours.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So anyway, we had some of those experiences, which was pretty cool. So investigatively, I did that, a lot. Was a part of, played a role in a lot of the attempts on New York City, small role, right? It's all hands on deck. So I wasn't like the main guy in a lot of them.
Well, you mean there were other probable attacks on New York after that, you're saying?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, imagine.
Yeah. That was funny, too. So I got in 2003, right? So Bush was president. So, and we were really getting after it at that point. Everybody was pretty good with it. And then, when the Iraq War, then it was the excuse for everybody to hate. But then, when President Obama came in, whatever, and this is not an indictment on him. I couldn't care less, but this is just the way it was. It was kind of like, okay, when are we going to get out of this terrorism game? And then it was all, well, you're profiling if you go into a neighborhood that's heavily Muslim. Right. And what you want to scream to people is all law enforcement is profiling.
Right.
Yeah,
right? We have the Russian organized crime squad. We have the Italian organized crime squad.
Right.
We have the Crips and the Bloods, right? You name it. we categorize our criminals, okay? Because that's the only way you can investigate it.
That's how crime works.
That's how crime works.
Right.
So when you investigated terrorism,
Right.
at that time you were investigating the Muslim population, right? Or people in it. It's just the way it was. They were so on board with helping, right? And that's where it was kind of got confusing. But anyway, my point is, it got, you know, the attacks that were coming on New York, they didn't get publicized quite as much because I just felt like with the new administration, they just wanted to
downplayed it.
Yeah, that's not really happened. But I can tell you, there was always something happening. There was always something happening. So.
Well, it's such a metropolis. It's kind of the mecca, so it's, you know, I'm sure it's targeted for sure, you know.
Oh, it's the top target in the world.
Yeah.
Right? It just it is. I don't know what's happening these days. I've been out of the game a long time, but there's never a shortage of work to go around. So yeah.
Speaking of you know, being out, I read that you wrote you loved your job, but you didn't like the environment, and that's what a good leader does. A good leader creates an environment that its employees will love, not so much to be in love with the job specifically itself, you know. And I thought that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's why I left the FBI. I loved being a special agent for the FBI. I loved being in law enforcement. I loved everything about it. But there's a leadership gap in the FBI, right? And some of the stuff that's happened over the last few years kind of bears that out, right? They
kind of seeing it publicly now.
Yeah, you know, and I get people all the time like, "Oh, you must be so mad that people are banging on the FBI." I'm like, "No, I'm not. They did that. They earned that.
Right.
That's what they did." You know, and that's public trust. So there was a leadership gap in the FBI, and I just kind of started to get tired of it, right? Why do I have to keep fighting to do my job? Right? You always have to get approval for stuff. And that's just the way it is. That's a bureaucracy. I got it. But sometimes it just felt like things were not getting approved because somebody didn't like me personally. Or they just didn't like the way I would do things. So I have the authority to say no, therefore I'll say no. You know, it got tiring, you know. Now that said, I'll always make the caveat, some of the best leaders I've ever met were in the FBI, right? I'll take them with me. If you say, Errol, go get 5 guys and go to war right now, 4 of them would be from the FBI.
Wow.
Right? So, you know, it's not the whole thing, but that's why I left. And, you know, and I tell people that story matters for leadership because I loved that job, but I left because the environment wasn't good. So I get people who I work with all the time going, people should care more. They should care more. And I'm like, why do you care if they care about their job? You have no control over that. They may have taken this job because this is the only thing they're qualified for and they need this job. Their motivation to come to work is out of your control, and they may be motivated to get money for their kids. I said, but what you can create is an environment that they like, an environment that's predictable, right? Behaviors. Holding everybody, making it clear what you're going to hold them accountable to, right? See behaviors, okay? And then following up with that, right? Anybody can get behind going to an environment like that. I sold copiers when I got out of the SEAL teams. Copiers.
No way.
I loved that job. Not because I like copiers. Who cares about copiers? Right. I worked for a guy who was crystal clear on what he expected from everybody, right? Held everybody to the same standard, was completely consistent. The people who didn't measure up left on their own. Right? Because it was like, this guy is not going to stop asking me about these same things, and I'm not doing it, so I'm leaving. Cool. Right? So what's not to love? So when that happens and everything's consistent, you follow this guy's process, you make money, all of a sudden you start to get a little pride in that company. You know what I mean? And people are wanting it the different way. Like, come work for me, have pride. Like, well,
you got to give them something to be proud of.
Got to give me something to be proud of, yeah. So that's why I talk a lot about environment, not worrying so much about people's motivation, because it's just, you can't control it.
I think that makes sense, and it's totally applicable to any career. You know, anything. Yeah. Off topic. Let's I just thought of something from my little town back in Maine that maybe you've heard of. The USS Pueblo. Ever heard of it?
Sure, of course.
Jim Layton.
Yep. Yeah.
Jim Layton was on that. He was captured. Obviously, was a prisoner of war for a long time. But he's from my little town back in Maine. I thought, being a Navy guy, maybe that would you would have heard of that at least.
Well, I know the
Pueblo. It's a surveillance ship, I believe, right?
I don't know
captured
the details.
Off the coast of Vietnam. They claimed that they were in Vietnamese waters.
Yeah.
They all survived, I believe, but because it was a surveillance ship, they didn't have any way to protect themselves. I mean, I think there was like one M16 on the whole boat or something like that. So they were pretty easily captured. But anyway, Jim Layton, a guy that was good friends with my dad. I used to go to Rotary Club with my dad every Thursday, and Jim would be there.
And he was on that.
He was on it. Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah.
I bet you that was scary.
Yeah. He spoke about it a number of times. Spoke to my high school about it. Spoke at Rotary about it. It was a very interesting story. I wish I could remember more detail of it, but I know that he was a prisoner of war for a long time. So yeah,
man, those guys, they had it hard.
Yeah,
I mean, any prisoner of war has it hard,
Yeah.
but forget about it. So yeah, what else? What do we got? Breathing, ice baths.
The whoop. I wear the whoop during my key. I can't wear it all the time because then I get too nuts. It gets with it. Yeah.
So I've got the whoop. So, we'll go into a different area. This was given to me by a group called the Warrior Angels Foundation. And what they do is they help people who have had TBI, right? Traumatic brain injury. So it was funny. I'm on their protocol with vitamins and supplements, and they give you this to monitor how you're doing.
Who's the organization?
Warrior Angels Foundation.
Is that it's not Gordon? Is that Dr. Gordon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I heard about them. Yeah.
They were on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Okay.
And I work with one of their affiliated doctors, a guy named John Hughes.
That's, you say you take supplements and whatnot. I know. I think they have also supplements for fighters or any contact sports people. I remember him talking about that.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff they have you taking?
Man, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause it's just like they sent it, and my wife was like, "I'm getting you the pill box, right? The whole thing, so you don't."
Tuesday, Wednesday.
That's it. No, that's exactly what it is. Because so what? If you want to hear about how I got involved,
Sure.
So when I was on Mark Devine's podcast, I was telling him the story about the injury and then all this stuff afterwards. And I don't know if you've ever talked to him or if you've listened to him, but he's a former SEAL and he runs SEAL Fit, and he's just a super successful guy and just a sweetheart, right? And so I'm telling the story, and I'm like, and then I just made a series of bad decisions, and he goes, Errol, not for nothing, but you may not have been thinking right based on the head injuries you had at the time. Nobody had ever said that to me, ever. And I was like, huh. That's pretty interesting. Fast forward, I'm in Colorado. I'm at my in-laws' house, and I meet this guy, John Hughes, who's a brilliant physician. And he talks about this Warrior Angels Foundation and TBI, and I literally just tell the story because now we have something in common. Hey, listen what happened to my head, right? And he says, look, I'd like to bring you in for a scan. And I thought he was just being polite. I'm like, yeah, sure. Right. Let's all say we'll do this and then not do it. Sure enough, he follows up with me. He brings me in. The technology now is like you can't even imagine. He puts this thing on my head, right? It takes longer to put the thing on my head than it does for the whole scan. They have me do 3 exercises, a little bit of breathing, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Instantaneously, the results come up. Okay. And so he goes, all right, here's a couple things. So this is where, because you always wonder if you do the ice baths and the breathing, does any of this matter? Is it really helping? He's like, all right, your heart and your brain sine curve are in perfect formation. He goes, that's a sign of somebody of mindfulness and breathing and all that stuff. He goes, that's awesome. I was like, okay, cool. So it works. And I'll tell you why this really matters in a minute. Then he says, okay, here's the next part of your brain, right? This part that's red right here, that's good. You're in something called alpha state at all times. And that's the state you want to be in. That's calm, that's focused, that's aware, right? So you're not letting the negative energy, rule you or whatever, right? Some people are in alpha state, like they're always just reacting to the environment, right? Okay, hey, thumbs up. I want to leave right now. He goes, well, here's the problem. See this blue area here? I said, yeah. He goes, that controls the emotion and the ability to absorb and handle emotions, right?
Frontal lobe stuff, right?
Whichever, I'm not sure which part of the brain it is, but it was blue. And he goes, that's not working. And he said, so for everybody who's listening to say, okay, ice baths and breathing, what does that matter? Well, if I hadn't done all the work to just try to stay level, right, to be in touch with those things, right, to understand the power of the breath and the power of the cold, then that blue area would have sent me God knows where.
Yeah.
Right? So it matters. That was really encouraging. Like, that matters. But now the next thing was, okay, now what? So he puts me on this protocol, and he starts with insulin, right? In through the nostrils to the brain. That's his first move. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know. Insulin, right? It's a natural, your body produces it. It's all natural. There's nothing with Warrior Angel Foundation, with any of the protocol. It's all supplements and vitamins and things like that. There's no medication. I literally walked to the car, and my wife is like, what happened in there? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you are a different person. I'm like, I just walked into the car. Lighter, not stressed about things. I used to get triggered by loud noises. I haven't had a good night's sleep in 25 years. Right now I'm sleeping like a baby. He's got me on the rest of this protocol. My point is, then he called the Warrior Angel Foundation and said, hey, we'd like to get Errol on this protocol. And it's like, there's help.
Wow.
There's help.
All natural stuff.
All natural stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard great things. You know, I believe in Rogan's podcast. You know,
I wish
those are the guys.
Yeah,
Rory Hamill. I wish he could have.
Yeah,
been
no,
part
I
of
know.
that,
I know.
We had a friend, a guest on, Rory, one of our first guests early on in our podcast, and it was about the time COVID came on. It was just before, I believe.
Before it, yeah.
And he ended up taking his own life. He was, combat wounded vet. He was missing a leg, and it sounded like that would be something ideal for him to participate in. Obviously, too late now, but you learn these things, and maybe talking about it can help somebody else listening.
It's not too late, and that's why I'm super appreciative to be here, because I figure you guys would let me kind of go some of those places, and that's the point. Mm-hmm. I promise you, there's somebody listening right now, whether they play a contact sport, whether they're a fighter, whether they were a soldier, and something just doesn't feel right. And I remember when I went into my medical board back in 1999, right? They were like, Errol, we don't know what to do with you. You look fine. Usually we have people coming in here with missing arms. And I was just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. My head hurts really bad. And they didn't even register that. Right. I could go through the head injuries that I had and the lack of care that I got. I hope it's not happening that way now. Right. But the point is that this is, they call it, right, the invisible injuries, right? And I just used to think I'm just kind of an asshole, I guess, sometimes, right? I just lose my temper. I snap. Even though I'm apologizing right away, right? You do something, you make a loud noise, I'm sorry about that, right? That gets old after a while, having to apologize all the time.
Well, I'm sure it gets old on the other end, too.
It gets old on the other end. So you just think, like, why don't I sleep, right? I'm up half the night walking around, doing whatever. Why? This is just my life. And, the message is there appears to be a way to help.
So since you've been doing this, been sleeping good, and
yes,
wow, that's amazing.
The biggest thing has been, because the sleep is everything, right? If you're not sleeping, you're waking up all pissed off anyway.
That's probably messes with your stress
and
level.
then that messes with your stress level.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So being able to sleep was the biggest part. But then just the thing I noticed the most also was, they ask you, do you have a sensitivity towards noise? I didn't even know what the question meant, right? I get, but what kind of noise? What are you talking about? Like, if I hear a bomb, I don't know. But the answer was yeah. Because if I hear somebody chewing on a carrot too loud, I'm like, I can't even take this.
You would hate to be around me chewing gum, then.
No, but it's not rational. Right. It's not reasonable, right? If my dogs are walking and their nails are click, 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 I would get like that. God forbid my kids start screaming, right? Whatever it is. I knew I was in pretty good shape when my 6-year-old daughter snuck up behind me and screamed in my ear, bah! And I was just like, she's so cute.
That's awesome.
And I remember I thought to myself, holy Christ, this might actually be working.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's early stages, right?
That's great.
They're going to go back and do another scan, and maybe they're going to find out that nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
But vitamins and supplements, right? Based on what they clearly know.
Say the name of the organization one more time.
Warrior Angel Foundation.
Warrior Angel Foundation.
Yeah, and they were on Rogan a couple times.
Yep.
A couple times.
Yeah, I remember hearing them. It really just caught my eye because they have I guess packs for athletes too.
I'm sure.
And obviously, getting in the head is definitely.
Have you ever had?
It's kind of what you do.
I tried to have a serious conversation with this guy a few podcasts ago about TBI and things like that, whether could possibly affected him. He's such a tough guy; he doesn't want to hear it. But have you ever had a brain scan?
Yeah.
You have.
Mm-hmm.
Like brain mapping, similar to what he did.
Not that way. I had just to see how much any white brain matter, and I had none, which is a good sign.
Oh, okay. Would that be something would you do something?
Yeah,
like
I think I would.
Yeah.
I know the UFC has teamed up with the Mayo Clinic, I think. And they're doing some stuff. They're even talking about using psilocybin for a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing
What
great
is
things
psilocybin?
about psilocybin.
Psilocybin is magic mushrooms. It's
okay.
It's the psychoactive chemical in
Okay.
magic mushrooms, but I think they're using it for PTSD. Soldiers.
I read something. I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but like a microdose of psilocybin.
Yes, but not even. I mean, they're documenting. They're even like for people that had like maybe soldiers, but even someone that maybe got abused or something, had a very traumatic experience, and you sit down with a therapist and you take a psilocybin dose and you kind of work your way through the situation. And a lot of people.
But the study I read, it says, in many cases, a small dosage of that can have the same effects as like a month-long use of heavy antidepressants. Yeah.
Well,
it's an all-natural, which I'm all about.
Yeah, I've got an opinion on that, not good or bad, but I do have an opinion. First of all, right, the antidepressants, all that stuff. I mean, when are we going to get over this?
I agree.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear that it's making people worse.
Right.
As
a guy that was on it, I totally 100% agree with that statement.
Yeah, and I was listening to one of your shows, and you were talking about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You got a couple bottles over. Let's just do that. What's the difference, right? And you're still gonna wake up. But
Good Friday's coming up.
So the is that why we don't have drinks? Okay. So the psychedelics, right? I'm not really for them or against them, but the Wim Hof method, right? That will get you into that state.
The hypotropic breathing.
Well,
is that what that would?
I mean,
is that what it's called? I think that's one form of it, right?
I mean, he calls it, hyperventilation, hoffervation, right?
Yeah, right.
But if you do it, if you're focused, right? If you're concentrating, and you start, and even if you trail off to just standard meditation, that will get you into a place that you haven't been. I do these workshops all the time, right? And I have people breathing, and people are coming out of it like, I don't even know where I just was.
Yeah.
So my point is, back to your original point about the breath, the breath can get you to those same places as those psychedelics. Now, they're natural. I got it. I wouldn't trust myself on it. You know what I mean? I just wouldn't trust myself. And there's something to be said for the discipline that goes along with, let me get to that spot just through my breath. Now, again, I'm not banging on anybody who's trying it, okay? But
I think there's probably a lot of people that didn't know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then and talking to the average Joe, myself, who's never done breathing techniques or a Wim Hof method or anything, talking to our audience, how does someone start with that? Where do you learn? Where do you get your information? You go into YouTube, you go into Google. How does somebody learn? And I'm interested. I think for a guy programmed the way I'm programmed, it would be exponentially beneficial for me. Where do I learn how to do it?
Start with an audio book.
www.leader193.com. Errol Doebler is the CEO of that company.
There you go.
But no, I mean, look, all joking aside, let's put a day aside. I'll bring you both through a session.
That'd be cool.
And that's how you start. Wim Hof is all over the YouTube.
Yeah.
Go see one of his things. You can you can go to my website. The information is out there.
Now I'm just asking questions here, but I've dealt, and I know a lot of people do, anxiety attacks. Is the proper time to execute the Wim Hof method or breathing techniques when you're in the middle of that? Because it's not always the
not off topic. There's an 18-year-old kid that was driving down
Newport,
Washington.
Just happened.
Crossed over the double line, hit someone head on. They had to medevac the woman to the hospital
because he was doing breathing techniques.
He was doing a breathing technique while he was driving.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the first things we talk about in the Wim Hof things, right? Don't
Don't
be operating heavy machinery while you're breathing because you'll go into a weird spot. To your question, right?
Like for example, if you're on stage and you're speaking, not that this would happen to me, but if I was on stage and I was speaking to 1,000 people, if I can get through the first 5 or 10 minutes, I'm good. But it's that initial. You can't be up there and be like, hang on, give me 5 minutes. Or give me 20 minutes.
Right.
I'm gonna do some breathing techniques. How does one do that? How does one find the time, and when is the proper place to do that? Because that's when I think I would need it. And I kind of like those battles. I kind of like those, internal struggles, because I like to battle through it. I don't want it to control my life,
Right.
So I like to battle through it and figure out how. But if breathing techniques can help me with that, I'm all about it.
Yeah, I will share an anecdote with
Okay.
you, right? Well, it's not an anecdote; it's a story. It happened. But it's funny you say the language you used, battle, right? I just did I'm on Instagram, right? You got to get on there and say stuff, and I was talking about, are we battling with our demons, right? Is that really making it better, battling ourselves? Or do we need to be partnering with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the language we use really matters. I digress a little bit. So, right, the precursor to the story is when I was in the FBI, I got attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment, right? They needed people like me and other FBI agents who had experience interviewing terrorists and could handle themselves on the battlefield, because our special ops forces, while they will crush every target out there, they weren't as adept at now talking to people and getting information for intelligence, right? So they said, all right, let's put some people like Errol in there with them. So I was there in 2010. We saw a ton of combat, right? It was an awesome experience, and then now I'm back. Fast forward 2016 or 2017, I start my business. I'm in Philadelphia. I'm about to go on a call. And I usually have a book with me because I'm always early. And so I duck into a coffee shop and I pull out a book by a guy named Simon Sinek called Leaders Eat Last. And he starts with this story of a pilot named Johnny Bravo. Okay? And he's talking about Johnny Bravo, and he's up in the air, and he's supporting this special operations unit on the ground. And I'm like, hey, cool, right? I can relate to this. And he's describing the terrain now, and I'm like, oh, they're definitely talking about Afghanistan. And then he's talking about how they're going into this canyon, and in the canyon, the fog is starting to settle on top, so he can't see underneath it. And I'm thinking to myself, I definitely know where they are, because there's only one group of people, only special ops forces would go to that area purposely. I know where they're talking, right? So I'm really into this story. Okay, and Johnny Bravo's like, I had to go underneath the clouds in the canyon, and they were ambushed. And I'm like, I can relate to that, right? Because we were in those firefights. I'm just digging the whole story, okay? Enjoying it. It's a great book, great story, until I realize my book is soaking wet. I'm sweating all over the place, and I'm doing this. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. And then I kind of do a double dish, like, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack, right? I'm panicking about that, right? So I got the double thing going. So what's the point here? Where did I go, right? I was like, this is familiar. How is this familiar? This is what happens every time I step into an ice bath. It is an induced panic attack. And I thought of that. And I'm like, what do I do when I'm in the ice bath? I take a breath. I get control of my breath, right? No. Right. Get it out, right? Because the science, the vagus nerve, calms you down. Get control of my breath, and then see what happens. Hope for the best. And that's what I did. I took 2 deep breaths, chilled out. Okay? I was like, okay, that's over. Right? Went on to my meeting, went home, told my wife what happened. And she was like, well, do you think you need to go see somebody? You think you have PTSD? And I'm like, look, I'll tell you, I might stay here for 3 hours, spilling my guts to you guys, right? I'll talk to anybody. Right. I don't have a problem with that. But I said, what are they going to do for me? Right. They're going to give me a pill?
That's the way I look at it.
They're going to try to figure out how to not give me panic attacks, and I just did that.
Right.
And she was like, huh.
Yep.
Look,
That's why I probably phrased it wrong, because words do matter. I said battle my demons, or
Yeah.
you know, and we kind of learned that from Mike Dolce when he was in here, and he's a dietitian. But I said cheat day, and he's like, let's not call it a cheat day because that's got a negative connotation. Let's call it an earned day.
There you go.
earned meal day,
Right.
You know what I mean? So it does make sense. But yeah, it's also funny that you said the realization that you're having a panic attack sort of brings on a whole nother level to a panic attack.
And what
because
is it? It's emotional awareness.
Right. You realize people around you may be seeing it, and that makes it worse. That
Yep.
magnifies it.
That's
know?
right.
So yeah.
That's right. So that's it. You know, and my wife, God bless her, she never agrees with me because I'm never right. Right? I'm like, I guess you're right again. Even she was like, huh.
Yeah.
But it's still for people listening. But this guy's a Navy SEAL, works for the FBI, and he's getting a panic attack reading a book. You know, people probably don't realize that, but it can happen to anybody.
It can happen to anybody.
But you're like the bravest guy I know. You're a fighter. You stand in front of dudes. You get punched in the face all the time. And I take you out on a motorcycle, and I look over, and you're fucking nervous as shit. You know what I mean? So it's
I'm white knuckling that.
Yeah, it's every, you know, what comes natural to some is totally foreign to others. And, you know, like me on bike, I've never been more comfortable in my life. I'm totally at ease and no nervousness, but that's foreign to you, and it's scary to you. And if you put me in a ring, I'd be terrified, you know? So.
Yeah.
But it's still the same process, right? What did we talk
exactly.
about from the beginning? I tell you, the process is always the same.
Right.
You still have to recognize what's happening to you, what's your emotion, right? Whatever that emotion was, I don't need to put a name on it, but it was there.
Right.
What am I doing? I'm shaking and sweating. What do I want to do? How do I want to be? I want to calm down. What's my plan? The situation is I'm in Starbucks having a panic attack. My mission is to get this panic attack over.
Right.
What are my actions? Breathe, right? That's it.
Yep.
What happens if it's not working? Contingency.
Yep.
Keep breathing, because that's the
'Cause
only way.
You do get those short breaths. And,
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
it feels like you're almost choking. You know?
And that is what you. So again, the cold exposure. There's so much to talk about when physiologically how it strengthens our immune system. But this is the real practical one, right? You said it yourself. How do I battle these panic attacks? Well, you've got to start from a base.
Yeah.
You've got to start with something that you know, okay? And so induce your own panic attack by getting into an ice bath. Learn how to breathe through it and get calm. And now, okay, again, I tell people in moments of crisis, you go to what you know. What do you know? At that moment, I knew ice baths, and I knew how to breathe through that panic. That's immediately what I went to. Until you have that base, you're going to just go to what you know, which could be anything. I don't know what it is. You're like, oh, fuck, whatever it is, right?
That's always like, stuff gets hard or tough. I'm like, man, cutting weight and wrestling was harder than this. You know what I'm saying? You always have, like you said, you always have something to fall back on. But like, okay, I've been here before. How do I get through it?
It's a basis, right? You have a baseline that you're applying. You can apply it to anything, right? Cutting weight, I don't even know. I get too hungry. But my point is, there's still a process, and it's still a stressful process. You've got to internalize some demons that you're going through. You don't want, you want that cookie. There's still a process you go through, and I guarantee that's the same process you go through in other stressful times or hard times. It's so that's what it is. We're solving it all right now.
Yeah. Now, do you do any public speaking? Or
I do. Obviously over the last year, it's all Zoom stuff, right? And, you get the phone calls. I wasn't focused on those keynote speeches early on. I really wanted to coach people. That was stupid. That should have been my first go, because the guys and gals who get it into that keynote speaking, they can make a living off of it. So I'm behind the curve on that. Yeah. So once things get back to normal,
I mean, I would imagine you'd be a perfect candidate for everything you've done in your career, and the fact that you're into the breathing and ice baths. You have a really different take. I'm sure I would imagine a lot of Navy SEALs and soldiers probably into a lot of these aspects too. But you seem to got a pretty grip on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So. My name is Errol Doebler. No, I'm just but it's going to be something we're going to get into, because it's
not just business. It could. I mean, you could be speaking to New York Giants. You know what I mean? It's all applicable. Oh,
100%, 100%. Look, the clients I had, I consider those public speaking engagements. Right? I go in. They say we want to have you in for 3 hours. Well, we're going to get deeper on the curriculum and things like that. But look, people hire me because they want to hear a couple of good stories. Right. So if I can relate the story to my process, all the better, right?
Well, it's like, good teachers can get your attention. And as long as you have a good story and get their attention, then you probably be able to sneak anything else you want to get in.
Right. Well, I'll tell them about the book and the process, but yeah. So I enjoy the speaking to folks. I enjoy, and the more I'm into this thing now, the more I truly enjoy just watching people get a little better. Right. It's really, really rewarding when you work with somebody for 2 months and you can see they come back to you and they say, the work stuff is going pretty good, but my home life is getting better, right? Because this emotion thing and being aware and deciding and sharing behaviors that we want for each other, it's just made all the difference. I mean, that's worth the price of admission. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, speaking of leadership, I know Frankie's going to roll his eyes, but in the world we're living in, it seems to be at the highest level now. We're struggling with some good leadership, you know what I mean? And that has a trickle-down effect to some degree, I'm sure.
You're a Joe Biden fan?
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Every time I bring up politics, he's like, gotta go there. Yeah. Gotta go there.
How do you feel? I seen, Tim Kennedy, I'm sure. Yeah. So I always respect people that have done what you have and what he has. I respect their perspective.
I don't know him personally, but I know who he is.
Just because, you guys done it, man. You guys are literally fighting for our freedoms. To me, like, you guys take the cake. I would take your opinion and your, thoughts on things over any politician any day of the week.
Agreed. Agreed.
But do you see that they hired who was a former military guy for the diversity, like they're trying for diversity in the military? And I seen Tim really push back on it. You see that?
Well, did you see that
they got rid of him now? They already got rid of the guy.
Oh, wow.
They already read because they searched his social media and seen he's like very, I guess, I don't know if you call it bipartisan or whatever, but he was a little, had some,
I'm not familiar with who he is.
Yeah.
So what, Tim got after him? He was
just saying there's the place, our military, our only job in the military is to win.
Yeah.
He's like, I want the best person next to me. It doesn't matter what color they are, what race they are, or anything. That's it. He's like, there's no need for this to be in war. There's no need for that.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to weigh in on that. Right. So I get questions like that around politics sometimes, and I generally, unless it's in my area of expertise, then I'm just a person adding noise. So people used to ask me about Trump all the time. I'm like, look, from a leadership perspective, here's what I like, here's what I didn't like, and here's what I would have told them. In this case, I think it's the same thing, right? The problem I have with the diversity thing is diversity of what? If just skin color? Is that really what we're doing?
That seems to be what the emphasis is on, for sure.
I got it, right? But, where are we talking about diversity of thought, right? Where are we talking about diversity of religious beliefs?
Correct.
Well, are we talking about, what diversity are we talking about? So when I'm working with people, I'm not big on platitudes unless I'm defining them, right? The term culture, I make sure I define, here's what I mean by culture, right? Now let's talk about it. Diversity, what are we talking about?
Right.
And that's the biggest problem. We are not defining what we mean.
I think that's important with any conversation. Ben Shapiro's famous for that, defining a word before you even talk about it, or even Steven Crowder.
But especially like in military, or especially in the special forces, like because Tim was saying, like, there's just not enough people to even pick from nowadays.
Right.
Now you're worrying. There's not even a good soldier to pick from for maybe a Navy SEAL, a Ranger, and whatnot. He said just no one qualifies, and now you're going to worry about having diversity in that in that department as well. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I agree with him. It's so I get it, right? I get the history, right? I'm not stupid. I understand what the country did, right? But here's the funny thing about history. It will always have happened. It will always have happened. We cannot get rid of it. We can apologize, but at some point, we have to move past it to a degree, not forget it, but we have to move past it. And what am I talking about? It goes right back to the beginning of our conversation. Right now, this country is in a repeat mode of anger based on stuff that happened.
Right.
Okay? It doesn't matter what was tried to be done to fix it or that things have gotten better.
Just living in the past.
Right?
Yeah.
All we're doing is living in the past. And now we are just looking for areas to find anything in our environment to justify our emotion of anger. That's where we are right now.
Right.
That's why
it's hard to move forward with that mindset.
It's hard to move forward with that mindset. You can't, if we cannot have a logical discussion around diversity if we keep going back to
Because then you're living in that time frame, and
we're living in it, and it's not applicable right now, right? And we can't have the same number of brown people and yellow people and white people and green people for the simple reason that we're not all equally distributed around the country.
Right.
We can't have the same number of Christians and Muslims and Buddhists in the same place because there's 90% Christian, so you're going to have... So where's the diversity there? And that would be my argument to people, but that's an opinion that, boy, you've got to be careful if you express it. I'm expressing it because I believe in it, but I can talk about it.
I don't think anybody cares if, like, I mean, I wouldn't care if the guy I'm fighting a war with is or a woman or a man or a Muslim or a black person.
Could care less.
I just want to make sure he's qualified.
Right, as long as you're not lowering the guidelines to get in. If you're not lowering those guidelines, I don't care. As long as the guideline is the same across the board, why would I care?
You an ass kicker? You're in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, look, so...
But that is happening.
Women
they are lowering the guidelines.
Women in the SEAL teams, right? They've just recently, in the last several years, said, okay, women, you're up. And I get that question a lot. And my answer is just that. What do I care?
Right.
Yeah.
As long as they go through the training and they make it, that means they're hard.
G.I. Jane, bro.
Yeah, great movie.
Debbie.
She crushed
That's
it.
probably her at her hottest.
So, but look, to be fair, right? It's always a discussion worth having. It absolutely is. Okay, and that's my opinion. But my challenge will always be diversity of what.
Right.
If it's just color we're talking about, let's just say it.
Right.
And that's cool. As long as we're being honest, then we can reasonably
You've defined
disagree.
it, yeah.
Let's define it. If we're talking about political affiliation, that's diversity. Are we having that? Let's define it. What do we mean? Because there's just too many ways to go.
Did you see they just made the military renew their pledge to the country, which supposedly only happens 3 times. I think it's when you enlist, when you re-enlist, and when you maybe serve overseas. But they just made them do it all again because, supposedly there's white supremacists in the military and we're supposed to be weeding them out. So the new administration made them re-up their I was going to say vows, but that's not the right word, their
just
pledge. Yeah.
Meaning like I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against foreign and
that's never in the history of our military. It's never been done outside of those 3 things.
Okay.
And they just made them do it again.
I'll talk a little bit about white supremacy, okay? Because I investigated white supremacists. And
while in the FBI.
While in the FBI.
They're a terrorist. They're a terrorist.
They are domestic. They are a domestic terrorist organization.
Right.
Okay, as well they should be.
Sure.
Right.
I don't think anybody would argue with that.
Nobody argues with it. Now look, unless everywhere else besides the state of New Jersey, they are just running things. I hate to tell you, folks, but I investigated them. They weren't up to much. Okay, they weren't up to much. Now, maybe the psycho who takes a gun, right, and does what he does, and then screams white supremacy. Okay, yeah, he's an asshole. He's a white supremacist. Right. But trust me when I tell you, from my experience, which I think I can speak with some form of expertise, they're not the ones we need to be worried about. Okay, as a group. A KKK or whatever they are. I'm not talking about lone wolf. I'm not talking about psycho boy. And I'm not talking about a guy who's just saying he's that, but he's still a lone wolf. Right? Bad across the board. But from a national threat standpoint, they were morons, right?
Get your shit up, Rod. Get your shit up, bro.
They were
fucking idiot.
They were morons. I interviewed so many of them.
I mean, it was someone to be that narrow-minded and have those ideologies. You would think they have to be somewhat of a moron.
They were morons. They were absolute morons, right? So again, if anybody's like, "Oh, Errol's defending white supremacists," no. I've met them. They are morons.
Fucking idiots. Yeah.
And they're not posing much of an organized threat because they're so stupid that they couldn't organize a birthday party if they had to. You know what I mean? So, I get it. That's kind of the new thing.
Well, it's being so heavily pushed that this race issue is so heavily pushed down your throat. Any channel, I don't even watch the news anymore. But from a guy who's investigated that, is it that major. Well, I mean, when did you retire out of the FBI?
2016.
Oh, so not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. Look, I also investigated. Crips and Bloods. Okay, those are black gangs.
Mm-hmm.
You know what we're not hearing about? First of all, they're way more organized and smart, right? Than those idiots in the white supremacy. Now, I'm not saying so. Now we have to be careful. Everybody knows the Crips and the Bloods are bad, right? But they are professional criminals. Like when you go break down a door there, you're either going to get one or two things. Yeah. You're going to get a fight, or you're going to get a bunch of dudes like this waiting for you.
Because they know the deal.
They know the drill, right?
Ever had any dealings with MS-13? I keep hearing they're like the baddest dudes.
Not a whole lot.
No.
Not a whole lot. But my point is, here's what we're not hearing around a lot of this stuff. The communities that those psychos ruin, those people want to help law enforcement more than anything they want. When I'm telling you it is that percentage of the people that are crushing neighborhoods, everybody else just like, please come in here and do something.
Help us out,
help us out. Now, law enforcement is dropping the ball a lot on that, right? We're getting people to trust us, and then all of a sudden we don't prosecute the people that they're informing on. That's a bad deal. Mm-hmm. But, so where are we going with a lot of this race stuff? Again, from a leadership perspective, we're not telling the entire stories across the board, okay? We're not. Is there inequality in the black community, in the Hispanic community? I guess somebody would have those numbers. I don't have them. But I've been in there, okay, and I've been in those bad neighborhoods, and I've talked to the black population, the Hispanic population, and I'm here to tell you they want order. They want that criminal element out, okay? And we're just not talking enough about that. Yeah. That those communities, right, are struggling because they're being held hostage. And the law enforcement needs to do something in a bigger, better way. But now it's kind of like, okay,
a lot of pressure on law enforcement,
Well, now it's a lot of pressure because if we're going in and we're making arrests, it's just, again, these are all real issues. Yeah. But the leadership is what's hurting us on these things. It's just it's all one side. And then
when I was growing up, I think my parents would have been happy, proud, maybe even pushed me to be in the military or a police officer. Or I wouldn't push my kids to do either of those in today's day and age. It's a scary place. It has changed so much. I mean, I know they're two completely different examples of what's going on, but they used to be sort of prideful entities, and I think that they're very downtrodden now, and a lot of people look at them like they're evil.
Well,
not so much the military.
No. But again, look. I'll tell you a story if you've got time. I don't know if we
got all the time in the world, brother.
So, deadly force policy. Right? Yeah. There's a lot of things about unarmed people getting shot and things like that. Here's the first rule of thumb. If you're carrying a gun and you have an altercation, you are in a gunfight.
Absolutely.
That's it. You are in a gunfight. There doesn't need to be two guns to be in a gunfight. That said, here's a story. I was working with a NYPD police detective, and we were working terrorism, right? So we're going around asking questions, right? And we finally get somebody say, all right, you need to go talk to this person there, right? They might be able to direct you better, right? So it wasn't somebody who was a terrorist or a terrorist supporter. It was somebody who knew somebody. We needed an angle. So we're like, all right, cool. So we went and on our way to talk to him, and clearly somebody gave him the heads up that we were coming, right? He comes out of his door, right? And it was a crappy place, it was a bad neighborhood, the whole thing. He comes out of his door with the tall neck bottle, right, upside down. And we're like, whoa. Now, I had the lead, right, because it was a narrow thing, and my partner was behind me. So I kind of had to, I was running the show here at this point. How are we going to deal with this guy? Calm down, the whole thing, right? He breaks the bottle. One step closer, and I'm coming at you. He literally says this. By deadly force rules, I could have shot him dead at that moment. And I would have been justified, right? If it happened today, it would have been me shooting an unarmed man or a beer, bottle. Why didn't you shoot him in the leg or whatever? I promise you, if it goes to court, I'm getting off.
Right.
Because, that's a deadly force situation and so on. Now,
But you've already been convicted by the public even before you went to court.
But that's what we're not. That's again the conversation we're not having. Okay. Yes, I've seen some of the videos of people getting shot, and it's like that guy needs to go to jail forever.
Right.
Okay, that was wrong. But that's not generally what's happening.
No.
Okay, or we're not at least getting the whole story. Now, I ended up talking that guy down, but in all the scary situations I've been in, that was the scariest. Because that was the one where I was like, this guy is going to make me shoot him.
Yeah.
He's going to make me shoot him.
That has to be terrifying.
It was, I was like, and, when we left, my partner was like, it's a good thing you were up front because I almost went over your shoulder and shot him anyway.
Wow.
Now, I remember I had the plan. I was like,
would you be the same person today if that had happened? Probably not.
who knows?
Yeah.
But again, I'm not trying to make a point that nobody who gets shot, everybody deserves it who gets shot. I'm not making that point. The point I'm making is, from a leadership perspective, what we're listening to is one side.
Right.
People are just taking one side and running with it.
Right.
And there's not just one side, especially in these things
Yeah.
that are happening. I remember that before that guy put that bottle down, I was going to holster and go, okay, come on. Because I knew I had him behind me, right? So I was okay. Yeah. But anything to not shoot that guy. Now, finally, he put it down and he talked to us. And he was crazy. We didn't even arrest him. We were like, dude, don't do that again. But, so anyway, I'm not even sure what the point of the story we were talking about. Just telling
the fact that they're not looking at both sides of the story.
No, yeah, I mean, and again, so where's my expertise in this, right? It's a leadership thing because we're listening to the politicians now.
Yeah.
And the politicians are just grabbing one side.
They just want us divided anyway.
I don't think it's solely the politicians. It's also the media. The media, they're
they're the puppets of the politicians, right?
They are they are, but it's also money, ratings, and getting the most divisive stories out there for ratings, and if you put a headline out there that's unarmed black guy shot by a police officer, that's going to bring a lot of viewership, and people are going to be up in arms, and but. Like you said, I think a lot of times the whole story is not told.
Yeah, no, look, the whole thing that set this off, right, the George Floyd thing, let's break that down.
Yeah.
Okay? There is and we go back to my book. Here's what the law enforcement is missing, okay? They're missing training based on emotion.
Yeah.
Okay? What was that guy's name? What was the cop's name? I don't even remember his name.
Derek
Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin.
Whatever his name.
Yeah.
Chauvin, we'll call him. He wasn't wrong initially, okay? I've got to subdue somebody. The best way to do that, right? You want to control somebody, where do you go? You go to their neck, right? That's it. Now, that said, he was handcuffed. He was lying on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't think we needed the neck sit anymore. Now, here's the problem. That's a problem in of itself. But the bigger problem is that his partners, and I know they were rookies, okay? But here's where the training comes in. Somebody should have had the wherewithal to say, Derek.
Yeah.
We got him.
I got him. Let me take it from here.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me take it from here. Because clearly, and apparently they knew each other, right? So there's all this stuff going on, right? So, yeah, what he did, he's going to get what he gets.
I don't know anybody that would argue with you with that perspective of it. Certainly the
that's the
perspective
problem,
that was put out there by the media that, he was a law-abiding citizen, that there's a lot of video that's come out recently that shows a lot more to that story, but there's no reason he should have. I think it was like 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, and it's irrelevant if he was a law-abiding citizen. It's truly irrelevant. Okay, and I get what you're saying.
I agree.
But that's where when we talk about police reform, okay, that's where we need the reform. That's where the conversations need to go, guys. Where are we on these emotions? Right? I couldn't. It's funny, right? I was in special operations. I was on New York SWAT team. I was a SEAL, doing all these things, right? And everybody's like, "Oh, that's so crazy." And I'm like, "It wasn't." You know why? Because we always got the drop, right? We were the ones controlling the action. It never seemed like it was that crazy to me. What's crazy to me is in Afghanistan, the regular army troops just rolling around in their Humvees waiting to get ambushed. The patrol, the beat cop, who's just got to literally always have his head on a swivel, right? That to me is crazy.
Yeah.
And those are the guys more and girls more than anybody who need the training around. Let's put the machismo aside. Let's talk about what are we doing when we feel a certain way. We got to talk about
when you have that surprise element, because you're already briefed. You know who you're dealing with. You've got you probably even know their behavior pattern and if they're aggressive or not. But you're right. The average beat cop who's approached by a crazy person, that's a spur of the moment thing that he would have no idea. So I think training would even be more crucial there, and
even more mundane than that. Right, because that's one instance, right? Because if a crazy person approaches them, they're going to go right to their law enforcement physical stuff. I'm getting a bad feeling, but I still have to walk around this neighborhood and not look threatening, right? Because what's the thing now, right? The cops in the community aren't meshing right, probably because the cops are walking around like this a little bit, right? But they can't be too off their guard because then something bad can happen. Right. So for them to be able to identify and process that stuff, the emotion-based, okay, I'm feeling like I'm a little on edge, and I'm looking like I'm on edge. I can't look like I'm on edge. I have to relax. How's my face muscles, right? That stuff matters. Yeah. That stuff matters, right? Because if somebody's looking for trouble and they see a law enforcement officer clenched up, there you go. I got it. If I want to provoke that person, there it is. This is going to be easy.
That's even more important because I'm friends with a few of them as COs, because you're surrounded all day by hardened criminals, so your demeanor and your outward, I guess, energy makes a big difference there. Because, if you're a beat cop, probably the majority of people passing you by are friendly, like law-abiding people. But as a CO, you're in there with the hardest of the hard, So,
I don't know how those guys do that. And girls.
I would think if you woke up and you were having a bad day, it'd probably be best to call out of work that day.
I don't know how. That's a whole nother animal. But, again, look, I hope I presented a fairly balanced but leadership-based opinion on some of these. We just talked about topics that nobody wants to talk about. Right. We just hit them all.
Well, it's good you brought it to a leadership, perspective too, and how, if we had better leadership, a lot of that stuff could have been avoided.
A lot of it can be avoided, right? Again, defund the police. I mean, who's the Seattle mayor or the Portland mayor? He's now asking for $2 million to beef the police.
Crazy.
I mean, what an idiot, right? What an idiot. But that's the leadership, right? He just got emotional, took one stance. Yeah, defund the police. Didn't have the guts to say, whoa. We need to implement some new training. Let me get the experts in here.
Right.
Because what just happened, what can we be doing different so it doesn't happen again? But he's a coward, right?
No question.
I mean, that's all there is to it. Yeah. Especially because he's backing down on what he said.
But all the polls show that that's not what the public wants.
Right.
They don't want to defund the police.
Right.
So who's saying it?
Well, just the people that want it's just chaos. The people that want chaos.
Right. The people that want us at each other's throats.
Well, look, there's a lot to be said for that angle too. Now I'm out of my depth on this, but the loudest people, right? The people who are getting canceled on Twitter and all that stuff. It's generally not a whole ton of people shouting at somebody to get canceled. It's usually a small percentage, but we're just
that's what I always say too. Like everybody, the right, the left, we're more alike than we think. People that have these opposing views, we're probably much more alike than people think.
I would like to think so.
I'd like to think so.
I'd like to think so, but if it just comes to, do we all just want a peaceful life?
Yeah,
I think most people just want a peaceful life.
I do too. But it's how the process to get that peaceful life, and a lot of it comes down to our constitutional rights and how you interpret that, and whether you think that something that was written, way back then still applies today. And there's just people that feel very opposite about it. I'm a hardcore constitutionalist. I believe it was written by some very intelligent people for a reason, and there are people that would say it was written with an ink pen, a quill pen, doesn't hold true today, So
I would agree with you. They were brilliant people writing something at a very hard time, right? They were getting oppressed, right? They were under a tyrannical regime, so to speak. But look, when it comes back to, we all have generally things more in common. Most people want to live a peaceful life.
Right.
But if you put one of those Antifa assholes in here, I'm not sure we'd have much in common with them.
No.
You know what I mean?
They seem to be, again, not to generalize, I don't know that I've ever actually met one, but anarchists. They just want anarchy. And what has anarchy ever really solved,
Well, look, I don't watch the news much anymore either. Okay? And so immediately when the Capitol was stormed, right, I had somebody call me, so what do you think of that? And I'm like, look, I don't know what to think. I know the Capitol was stormed, okay? And if you're asking me if I support that, my answer is no, I don't. However, if I had to pick the Capitol being stormed with what I believe the class of generally the worst leaders we've ever seen in the world, or the guy's pizza place getting torched,
all right.
I'm for the Capitol getting stormed, okay?
I
now,
would agree.
I'm for neither. Okay, I'm making a point though.
Right,
okay,
right.
What and that's these Antifa guys and girls. So again, there just are some people who
want to see the world burn.
They just I don't know what we would agree on if you think it's okay to crush somebody's livelihood by
I think you could take
restaurant.
individual concepts or individual ideas, like Frankie said, and maybe we'll use one that's near and dear to me, Second Amendment. I think the people on the opposing side, their view of it is they want less people to die. And I understand that. We just have a completely different viewpoint of how to get there and why law-abiding citizens with guns is the way to get there rather than stripping law-abiding citizens of guns. So I get what you're saying, Frankie, and I don't disagree on it, but I think you would have to break it down on an individual, sort of basis of each what you disagree on, rather than just saying we all want the same thing.
I just think what you hear like the loudest on that side and the loudest on this side. That's
just
what you
noise,
hear.
man. Yeah,
that's what you hear the most.
Yeah. It's just noise. Look, this gun thing. It's a great conversation. This might go viral. Like, oh my God, they talked about race, guns, religion. Like, oh my God, who's talking about that anymore? But look, the gun thing again. It's a joke. Law-abiding citizens are going to take, I need to have 3 locks on my weapons now? Okay. And they're going to put 3 locks on their weapons. Again, I feel like I speak from an area of expertise. How
much harder can you make it for me? How much harder?
And let me tell you about guns, right? I wasn't an undercover. I was in charge of the operation. It was my case. We had inserted an undercover into a group. Okay, and it was gangs. And we were going on gun buys. So we got a ton of cash. And me and the undercover talked it over. I said, spend it all if you can. Let's see what they got. Now, I slid that one under the radar. If I told the bosses that I was going to spend it all on one, I would have gotten shut down. But I wanted to see.
Right.
I wanted to see, on a moment's notice, how many guns can we buy? We bought 10 guns, AK-47s, sawed-off shotguns. There was a 50 caliber handgun. I'd never seen anything.
50 caliber handgun?
It was the biggest
Desert
thing.
Eagle. Desert Eagle.
Oh, really?
It was the biggest thing that right.
Desert Eagle. Yeah.
Lock, stock, and smoke tobacco.
Yeah.
Made by Israeli Arms. Yeah.
Which was that Desert Eagle 5.0?
Oh, it's been in a lot
Snatch.
of movies, but
Snatch.
yeah. It's been in it because it's such an opposing. It's really sort of a shitty. It's so heavy. It's like who the fuck would actually? It's the practicality of it. But for movies, it's amazing.
I saw it. They had one.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, the Desert Eagle 5.0.
Right.
The point I'm making is, once again, we're not having we're taking a side on gun control. I literally watched a guy get on the phone to 3 different people and go, yeah, bring me that, bring me this, bring me that, and they all ran to this. It was an arsenal.
Yeah.
In New York?
In New Jersey.
Okay, so the hardest gun laws in the country.
Right.
And that still happens.
So, again, what's the point we're making here? We're just not having the right conversation, right? And again, look, the NRA
gun-free zones in many Philly and in many are the highest crime areas with guns there are in the world in some places.
right?
You know,
Oh,
Chicago. You know, and it should show you that some of these policies just don't work. You know.
Well, I'll give you my opinion on concealed carry and civilians carrying, weapons. Look, I'm for. I think people should be allowed to have guns. I do not think people should be allowed to carry their guns outside of their home, and here's why. I was in the FBI. I carried a gun for a living, and I've told you now 2 situations. Well, maybe one. I could tell you another one where I had to make a choice to shoot somebody or not. I'm a professional. It was one of the hardest decisions I had to make. And I lived with a gun, trained with that gun all the time. I know I could have hit that guy anywhere I wanted to. If we don't have that same training requirement for people just walking around with weapons, I don't know what's going to happen.
See, I don't know that I agree with you there, because of circumstances. It's completely different circumstances. The person leaving their house going out with that gun is 99% of the time defensive. You are going out there, you have your gun as offensive if somebody picks up a beer bottle or whatever against you. I think that people have a right to defend themselves. And I think in the rare opportunity that somebody has a gun and is shooting up a grocery store, not only do you have the right to defend yourself, you have the right to defend people around you, and that could save a lot of people. And it has. It's, the Texas church shooting. There was a older gentleman, I think he was in his 70s, and the guy was shooting up the church, and he took him out. You know what I mean?
I remember.
So it is practical. It is not heavily reported on because people don't want you. The news doesn't want you to know that. But I would disagree with you on that, Errol. I think law-abiding citizens. First of all, it is your responsibility to get proper training on it. And if you're willy-nilly walking around because you live in a state where you can carry and you don't have proper training, you're an idiot, and you shouldn't be. But I think that everybody has the right to defend themselves, and in today's day and age, we live in a very volatile world. It could happen, especially women. I think that I encourage any girl that I know to get their, firearms ID card. I have my concealed carry in 3 states: Florida, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and I still can't carry in New Jersey because you can't. It'll never happen.
Right. But look, and again, it's not something I would go to the mat to say people shouldn't. It just makes me nervous, right? Having been someone who carries a gun, I'm like, the less people walking around with guns, the better. Let's just keep them in the homes. But I get it.
It's worked well for Texas. It's worked very well for Texas.
Texas,
Florida.
Texas took right. They're doing things differently. It appears to be working out for them. It appears to be working out. But yeah,
it's a stand your ground state, and I think criminals recognize that. It's a big difference. In New Jersey, the policy essentially is that you have to retreat to the furthest point you can, wherever it may be. It may be a closet, maybe the darkest, deepest corner of your closet in your back bedroom, and the fight started with the intruder, the guy that came to rob you. It started at your front doorstep, right? And you retreated up 2 flights of stairs.
You don't go nowhere. You don't go nowhere.
I don't live in Frankie's
this guy's
house.
always in his closet. He's waiting to come out the closet for a long time.
See, I told you, old and gay jokes. That's all he does.
Oh God! There we go. That's the only topic we haven't cut yet.
So essentially, that's how it's worded. You have to retreat to the furthest possible point you can, and then you can defend yourself. You know what I mean? But Texas and some other states are very different. It's stand your ground. If you feel like your life is being threatened or jeopardy, you can stand where you are and defend yourself. And I think that's why crime stats are, disproportionately. I don't know off the top of my head. I can't recite them, but it all comes down to populace, and there's a lot of variables there. New Jersey is a small state; it's a very dense state. Texas is a huge state, so it's a lot of variables you'd have to weigh in there. But I would think, from a criminal standpoint, if I was going to rob somebody, I'd rather rob somebody in New Jersey than I would in Texas.
Well, yeah, and look, excuse me, just that again, that's a real conversation to have, right? Concealed carry, we can have that conversation, right? And disagree.
Where hasn't it worked? To sort of support your argument, where hasn't it worked?
I have no idea. Yeah. I don't know the stats. I don't know anything. I just know from a personal standpoint, I just prefer just keep it home.
Oh, I respect that.
Just keep it home. But I get
even though
it.
we disagree, I respect your point of view.
But the real conversation is.
But say that dude, say you didn't have your gun that day, and he pulled maybe what
if he was a civilian, you mean?
No, I'm saying just say, hey, he didn't have the gun that day, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, just hypothetically, the guy had that thing charged at him. He didn't have the gun to take care of himself.
Well, that's right.
Then he'd been like, damn, I wish I had my gun.
I wish I had my gun that day. No doubt.
So,
no doubt. No doubt. Look, so it's again, it's.
The idea is to get through life.
There's
and
no
never,
easy answer with
ever
guns,
need
though.
it, and that is the probability. The probability for most people is that you'll go through life and never need it. You'll never be put in that circumstance. But the one time you are, I'd rather have it.
No doubt. No, I'm not going to certainly not going to disagree with you there. But again, the bigger issue is what we're saying about guns.
Yeah.
Right. This idea that look, background checks. Okay, fine, cool, whatever. That's fine. Run all the backgrounds. I'm for that.
Right.
We're still not addressing the fact that if somebody wants to get a gun, they're going to be able to get a gun and wreak havoc if they want to, right? So no matter how many laws you put down, no matter how many background checks and locks you have to put on.
I think bigger than that, even maybe the bigger subject or the bigger conversation that has to be had is mental health. I mean, mental health is...
I said America's 5% of the Earth's population. We own 45% of the guns in the world.
Well, because of our Constitution is the reason why. But, mental health has to be addressed. No gun has ever shot anybody by itself. It's usually, and I'm not saying always, but usually somebody in a mental health crisis that is committing these, atrocities.
I would say that it's 100% of people in a mental health crisis. It's 100%. But, then again, what do you do with that? So, that's guns. Yep. What's next?
Yeah. Religion? Anybody for religion?
Right. Let's talk about abortion.
Yeah. We may get banned for this one. Errol, you can never come back.
Oh my God.
No, I'm kidding. Listen, I think the reason we can have this conversation and it has flowed well is first of all, you're well spoken. Secondly, you come from an area of expertise. You everything you've talked about, you've lived. You know what I mean? You've been there. You're not just some schmo off the street just coming in here, spewing at the mouth saying I feel this way. I feel it's you've been a military guy. You've been an FBI guy. You've investigated terrorism. You've investigated Bloods and Crips, and you've met with communities and had conversations. I mean, if there's anybody that could come in here and speak about it, I would think it would be you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and it's funny because it's not like I'm trying to be provocative. I'm not, right?
Yeah,
these are logical conversations.
Well, it's conversations people are scared to have, and I'm kind of impressed that you're not scared to have it.
Well, and here's why. Because I was with my brother and sister-in-law, and they're super healthy, super motivated. They're just good people, right? And they kind of feel the same way about this COVID thing, right? It's not a COVID problem; it's a health problem,
Correct.
and we're creating now more blah 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 blah. And I just casually told them, I was like, I was on a podcast the other day, and I finally told somebody, we don't have a COVID problem, we have a health problem. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you said that?
Yeah.
And I go, yeah. He goes, thank God somebody said. And it struck me like, wow, people are waiting for
to hear
people
this,
to say something that's, and then but not just be noise. Say it. Have some.
Why is that though? Fear. People don't want to be attacked. I mean, our comments are going to be, fucking assholes. Well, that's cool. You still listen. I'm an American. You're an American. We live in America. We have a right to have an opinion. I like to think that, we see both sides and that we understand both sides and that we've had many people on that couch that are on both sides, and that's what it's all about. Educating yourself. I don't think of myself as just simple-minded. I learn every time we have somebody in here. I learn something new, and that's what conversation's all about. That doesn't mean that I don't have like steadfast and things I'm really serious about, and things that are probably maybe more things that I would lay down to die for. You know what I mean? Things like the Second Amendment. That's probably always going to be very personal to me, and
clearly,
so
clearly. I mean, look, here's the thing too. I have a business to run, right? I rely on people coming to me for an objective opinion. So, I want to be able to talk about these hard issues, and if nothing else, have somebody go, huh?
Yeah.
Right. I often talk about, I think the United States is the greatest country in the world. Okay? Here's why.
Yeah.
I've traveled the world.
Yeah.
I have seen the worst the world has to offer up front and close.
Right.
Okay? And yeah,
would you agree with the statement that most people that hate America have not done that?
Well, I don't know. Boy, if they have and they still hate America, yeah, I'd like to meet them. I'd like to hear.
Right.
You know, and so I'm not afraid to say no. This is, in my opinion, the greatest country in the world. Do we have our problems? Yes. I wrote a blog. I blog a lot, right? I wrote a blog the other day. If you want to be a great leader, appropriate culture. Right? Cultural appropriation. But my point was this, okay? Great leaders operate in a growth mindset, right? Not a fixed mindset. I mean, those are terms that are thrown around, but fixed mindset. Here's my way. This is the way. I'm going to the death on my way. Growth mindset. I like my way. I think my way is the best. What do you think? What's your way? Because your way might be better, and I want to copy your way because I just want the best way. How do we get the best way, right? The three of us hanging around, we're from New York, New Jersey, right? We're pretty the same. We're going to have a lot of fun hanging out with each other, but over the course of years, we're not going to learn much more from each other because we're kind of the same. That's fine, okay? But until I have visited a country in Africa, a country in South America, a country in Asia, Europe, and seeing how other people do things, and we're like, oh man, look at that. I'm doing that, right? I will appropriate that part of the culture because that's awesome.
Right.
I'm big into, as we talked about, mindfulness, right? Breathing, all of that stuff, right? So East Asian, South Asian culture, Native American culture, I'm all over it, right? All over it. The chanting, the whole thing. And you better believe if I've got an artifact or a piece of clothing that represents a Native American culture, because I'm wearing it, because I'm like, this whole spirit thing they do, I'm in for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're damn right I'm appropriating that part of the culture because that's what makes us better. That's what puts us in the growth mindset.
Isn't that what America's about? I mean, we're all
the melting pot.
The melting pot. Yeah, I mean, we appropriate everyone else's culture.
Everybody else's culture.
I love a little bit of every culture. You know what I mean? That's what's great about it. Why? I just don't get how we're going this way.
Well, and that's why I think, at some point, that's why I purposely use the term appropriate culture. Because I want somebody to call me a racist, because then I'll know you haven't read the article.
Oh, you came on the right show.
But then I'll know you haven't read the article.
Right.
I usually get, look, I don't get thousands of comments on my stuff, but I usually get some. People read it. You know how many I got? I got one like.
Yeah.
Okay, which is fine.
Right.
But I appreciated that because, again, I saw how many people looked at it. And that just
people were scared to hit that like button.
Well, that's one thing. That's fine. But I also didn't get the people saying, "Oh, you're a racist. You're this. You're that. That's not the way you're supposed to do things." Because I would hope that they did read it and went, "How do I argue with this?
Right.
How do I argue with taking the best of another culture is a good thing and celebrating it?" But again, cultural appropriation, another term that's
part of the whole cancel culture.
Well, I don't even know it. I know what the cancel culture is, but that's just a realm that, you know what I mean?
With Ian Smith, these hands ain't canceled ever.
I saw it. I liked that today. I saw you liked it before me. You beat me to it. Yeah. I'm more impressed with him every day and the spine that guy has.
Who are we talking about?
Ian Smith, he's the guy that took all the fire from refused to close the gym.
Attila's Gym.
Yeah, he refused to close.
He's hardcore,
They've bankrupted him. They even cleaned out his GoFundMe. They've done, and he's still standing his ground, man.
He is. That's a guy who
that's a leader.
There was a turning point where he could have said, "Okay, enough is enough,"
and they did everything they could do.
And he's right. The fact that he's still going strong. It'll be interesting to see the impact.
But he's not. He's just not this stubborn guy that's just like, fuck it. I believe in my convictions and I want to keep my gym open. He has really become a scientist at this point. He's brought people in. He's done the research. It's mostly his partner that is probably a little more well read than him. But Ian is a tremendous speaker. And I think he's been on Tucker Carlson like 8 times or something. He's really well read. He's relatable. We've had him on the podcast, and he knows his subject matter, and he agrees with you 100% that this is a health issue. This is not a COVID issue.
Yeah.
This is a health issue.
Well, he's also, again, I follow the general story, right? I know, I'm always like, is that guy still fighting? Jesus,
still.
Good for him. But you're right. The one thing that I've recently seen was he got kicked off a flight, right, for not wearing a mask. Now, he clearly knew that was going to happen. Cool, that's allowed. That's civil disobedience at its best, right? That is the definition of it. I will break a law I disagree with peacefully. That was the 60s civil rights movement to a T, right? That's why that was a beautiful movement. And you know that he acted right, because otherwise we would have heard about it. See, he is a psychopath. But then...
Because he went on there with the science behind it. I mean, how does it make any sense? Everybody on that plane, it can be packed to the hilt. Nobody's 6 feet apart. You can all put, as long as you're putting drink or food in your mouth, nobody has to wear a mask. So everybody's sipping and eating. Explain to me the science.
Well, but what he did was, more importantly than that, is he remained calm.
Yeah.
He was like,
which he's very good at.
I'm going to let them do this to me, because if he struggled, there's 15 videos of that thing guaranteed, and not one of them's surfaced, right?
Yeah. Sure.
But the other thing that he did was then he showed a picture of John Kerry.
Yes.
Not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to sue, what is it, American? Or
Yes. Yep.
I mean,
wild.
We've had a couple friends lately. Cody Gambler, a UFC fighter, just had an experience with that, and I my heart kind of goes out to him, because he had a 2-year-old on a plane, and how do you keep a 2-year-old in a mask? How?
Yeah.
And they made him mask his kid up. His kid freaked out, had a little meltdown, and they booted him off the plane.
Yeah.
It happened to my sister-in-law.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
It's unbelievable. I mean, that 2 years old, like, haven't we all agreed on that science? I don't think that one's disputed.
Right.
The little ones are good.
Yeah,
right? They're good.
Right.
And then, I know you're all about controlling your emotion, but of course that's an emotional thing. Who do you focus your emotion at? The stewardesses are kind of doing what they're being told to do. You know what I mean? I think some are a little more just like restaurants. I know what restaurants I can go to and they don't give a shit, and I know I wouldn't name them. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I know restaurants you go to, the moment you walk in the door, they're going to say, put your mask on. You know what I mean? And I don't go to those ones.
Yeah. Well, again, you talk about, we bring it back to emotional awareness. I don't know what I would do.
Right.
I would like to think that I would remain calm.
Well, Cody didn't do that.
No.
What did he do? Did he
bust out his camera?
He went after the stewardess who was hiding in the bathroom, banging on the bathroom. And then he went to the cockpit
and films the pilots with no mask on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, dude. Yeah.
I mean,
he's
a wild man.
Exasperated his revenge for sure.
He's a wild man.
I kind of don't blame him though. Him.
It's when again, I would like to think that I would just get off the plane and do, but I can't guarantee that.
Yeah.
You're on the plane. You know how hard it is to get on a plane with a 2-year-old? Right. Now you're telling me I got to get off?
Right.
I just think there's a way to do it. If you see that parents are making an effort, to get this, and maybe the kid needs to cry and have a little meltdown, and then you can get the mask on. If you're trying, but if you're just like, put the mask on or you're off this plane, come on. You know what I mean? Come on.
I don't know, but
I thought 2 and under didn't have to wear them.
Yeah, well, I think it's 2 and under. But how old's Cody's?
He was 2.
He was 2.
No, 2 under 2.
Yeah.
Under
Once
2.
they turn 2, I think.
So maybe that's why.
You got to lock it on. Yeah. No. So it's under 2.
Okay.
And I know that because we were in Colorado, and we were going to fly back, and my wife was going to extend a couple more days because we wanted to go skiing, and that would have been the day after my daughter's 2nd birthday. Now, there's no way to prove that she would have been 2. We could have just lied, but we were like, no, don't extend.
Yeah.
Go while she's under 2 because you never know.
Right.
But, is that really? That's how we're living?
I know.
That's how we're living?
It's crazy. And now it's being talked about that you're going to have COVID passports now. You know what I mean? I mean, how crazy is that?
Well, show me your papers.
Yeah. I'll print some off.
That'll be your black market move. The fake COVID passports.
Yeah.
Where can I get a fake?
I got a couple
COVID
hot ones.
I got to go to Raj. He's making them in
no
his
issue with anybody. My dad got vaccinated. That's great. You know, he's got comorbidities. He probably should be. But for somebody to remove my constitutional rights to make me get vaccinated, it's. I mean, when has there been another time like this in history?
I'll tell you another story if I can. Can I tell you another story?
Yeah, of
All
course.
So when you go through the FBI Academy, one of the courses that they bring you through is ethics, okay? And one of the things you do in this part of the ethics course is they bring you to the Holocaust Museum. And the reason that they bring you to the Holocaust Museum, the premise of that portion of the course is things like what happened in Nazi Germany happen over time. It's one little thing at a time where law enforcement starts to ignore the law, excuse me, and act at the whim of people who want you to not enforce the law, right? And that's what happened, little over little bit of time over a little bit of time. Now, what was their point? Their point was simply, from an ethics standpoint, you have to follow the rule of law. You have to follow the Constitution. You can't do, just because you have some crazy boss who's telling you to do something and you're worried for your job is to stand up for the rule of law and what's right. You know, look, we joked even before the thing, like, we can't talk about, you know, the comparison to Nazi Germany, show me your papers. But I'm sorry, you tell me a different example to use.
Right.
Show me your papers, or else you can't come in here.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying we're going towards Nazi Germany, but what I am saying is something to think about, right? This is what they teach at the FBI Academy around ethics. You have to pay attention to when laws are starting to be violated, people's rights are starting to be violated. It is your job to stand up, not go along with it, as hard as it's going to be. So, yeah,
I read something too about Hitler's era that, you know, in the beginning it was removing literature was kind of how it started, especially history and things like that. And look what's going on now with banning of things that you think are so unassumingly simple, like Dr. Zeus and things. I mean, it's you hear about like every week there's like something new getting banned. You know, it's crazy.
The history of banning.
Roger's all reading.
Yeah, I read Dr. Zeus.
It was not a read no more.
It was this or Dr. Zeus.
Well, you know, look, I think history speaks for itself on what the outcome of places that ban books and burn books. It's typically not good.
Not good.
You know, look, but again, what's the other side of the argument? I guess they're racist and they didn't even know it, and I guess that's one side. That's one way to look at it. So I guess I'll give you that. But again,
I guess
history of
we talk about defining things, right? You talked about that and how important it is. I think you have to define that. What I saw a lady on Instagram the other day saying that Band-Aids are racist. You know, like Band-Aids because of the color of them. Like, where do you draw the line of what is there has to be a definition there. If Dr. Zeus is racist, why can't a Band-Aid be racist? You know, like it's there has to be a definition. Right?
I want to know if my daughter's princess Band-Aid is racist.
Is Ninja Turtle Band-Aid racist, bro?
No, just the ones.
Right, because you got to clear them out if they are.
But that Band-Aid color ain't the color
I
of
don't
my
know,
skin.
Man. Tell that to that wacko lady that was going off on a rant about.
Well, I mean, there's some. Those are those are outliers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, that's. I listened to somebody the other day say math was racist.
Yeah.
I mean, why would we?
I might agree with that.
If I don't have to do it anymore, I'll agree with it.
Why would you spend your emotional energy on listening to that?
Yeah.
But there are, look, if somebody's saying that in Dr. Seuss there is a negative depiction of an Asian person, okay, if that's how you feel, then that's cool, I guess. I'm not sure that Dr. Seuss was targeting Asians, but maybe. I don't know.
Wouldn't it have to? Isn't intent important? I mean, intent is crucially important, I would think, right?
Well,
if the intent is there, right, to damage a race or talk badly or be racist in nature or whatever, then sure. I don't know. Has anybody interviewed the guy that wrote Dr. Seuss? What was he racist towards
Well, it
Asians?
was actually Dr. Seuss who wrote Green Eggs and Ham and all the other books we've been talking about.
Well, I think somebody would
Whatever,
counter that
idiot.
argument to say, even if you don't have the intent, that it's almost worse. You're not even aware of what you're saying that might be
Well,
racist.
stupidity, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So look, again, if in the spirit of saying, well, what is the other side of that argument? But when it comes to the kids' books, I think there's another one. And by the way, we've got all of them. So I'm like, I don't even know what's going on in my house.
Yeah.
We've got
Well, someone, I guess, maybe to better define what I'm saying is, someone may watch this and they may come on and say, "Oh, Errol Doebler is an absolute racist." Don't we need to define that? Like.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I would think so. But that's where this has just gotten so.
But I think it's you can't because racist in your
Right.
term of racism, but I mean
Well,
anybody
but-
can be like, oh,
But where you define it is by law, right?
But I
Isn't
think
that
I think
where-
everyone defines it. Well, yeah, I guess if you're
when you
if you're,
start implementing laws and banning
okay, I
things,
see what
and
you're saying.
you know
Yeah.
that's where I think it becomes crucial. That's where you do need to define it. And
Well, and that's an important point that you make, right? Because again, the civil rights movement of the '60s is the model for civil rights movements. Why?
Correct.
Because there were literal laws.
and it's defined very well.
There were literal laws that banned black people from doing or being someplace. That I think we can all agree that's ridiculous and
No
atrocious.
question. No question.
Right? So therefore, from that standpoint, right, the sit-ins, the civil disobedience, sitting in the front of the bus, sitting at the counter, right? That's good stuff. That's magical, right? Because we have to change those laws. I got news for everybody. Racism isn't going anywhere. It's just simply not.
Yeah.
But as long as it is not government racism, as long as the laws aren't saying because you are this color, because you are this religion, you can't do these things, then we're just dealing with each other as individuals.
Right.
And it seems like we can't even handle that now. Right? We can't even handle that. So I don't even know where we're going with this one, but at least we covered race. I think abortion is next.
And religion, for sure. Yeah. I would say of all the major topics, that's the one that I don't lay on the cross and die for. Is I'm not personally. I know how I feel as a God-fearing guy, but I don't know about implementing law, and abortion's a tough one for me. You know what I mean? It's a tough one for me.
Well, yeah.
Personally, if I got a girl pregnant, and this is the truth, it never happened. I mean, I'm not going to say there weren't a couple mornings where I might have texted, "Hey, what about the morning after pill?" That's a little different to me. But if I got a girl pregnant, I would absolutely do the right thing. I would never say go get an abortion. And obviously she's a huge part of that decision as well. But the bigger part of that decision as well, probably. But so that's personally. I just don't know, as a policy or as agreeing with one side or the other, how I fall on that from the perspective of law. I don't know where exactly I am on that.
Look, it's a tough issue,
Yeah.
right? For sure. I will say this, right? I kind of feel with you talk about a woman's choice, yeah, and trust me, I've known women who've had abortions, and it's not something that they just forget about, right? So somebody goes and does that. That's something that they're living with, right? So nobody's off scot-free.
I'll play devil's advocate here. I know not many, one really, that has done it on a regular basis, I would almost say, and seems to be, and again, we never know what goes on in somebody's head or what goes on in somebody's home, but seems to be, because of the frequency of the amount of times it's happened, seems to be really clear conscience about it, so.
Yeah, and I would say that they're probably an outlier.
Yeah.
I think most women who have to make that decision and do it,
I would think.
they struggle.
I would
think they do.
I would think.
At least the ones that I've talked to, right?
Yeah.
It's an issue. That said, I don't feel like I'm going out on a limb when I say I don't think when the head is crowning
Right. Frankie talks about that a lot.
we can do an abortion there. I don't think I'm really going. I don't think I'm a radical by saying I don't think I'm good with that. I don't think I'm good with that part.
again, comes down to defining when you can and can't, I guess. But what is it? New York, you can have an abortion right up until
I think
basically birth, isn't it?
Virginia, I think. Yeah.
Oh, is it Virginia? I thought it was New York.
I don't know. I read
It's
that, and
mind-blowing
I'm
to
like,
me.
I'm kind of hoping
Yeah.
that I'm not reading this right,
Yeah.
but apparently I was.
If anybody actually, and I didn't dig heavily into it, but I saw a little bit, and I saw like a diagram, I guess, if you will, of how it's done. If anybody actually saw that, I think it would make anybody, I'm talking about in like the last trimester and things when it's essentially a human, or it looks like a human at least, and how, they're sucked out in pieces, basically. It's disgusting.
Yeah. All right, good. I'm glad we hit it.
Yeah.
Got it all.
Well,
I think we're pretty close.
how about circumcision? Anybody want? Frankie's thinking about getting it done. I've encouraged him heavily. It's time. Just tired of cleaning the wrinkles,
Jesus.
rubbing alcohol and Q-tips everywhere.
Wrinkles. It's your department, bro. Wrinkles is your department.
Oh man.
Oh, Frankie!
We're not really going to air this episode, are we?
Yeah.
Shout out Errol's book.
Yeah, Errol's book, The Process, Art, and Science of Leadership. Man, it was really good having you here.
I appreciate it,
Pick your
guys.
brain. I would really love to take you up on that breathing thing.
We're
this
done.
dude,
I need it more than this guy does.
He
yeah.
doesn't go tanning.
No,
It's high blood
doesn't
pressure.
go tanning.
High
You know
blood
what I'm saying?
pressure.
So
It's anxiety.
no, it's done. I'm anytime you guys want. So now it's on camera. You guys
Okay,
said you want to
cool.
do it.
Yeah.
We'll get it done in the
well,
next
maybe we
couple
could
weeks.
even document it. It'd be kind of cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do that.
We're always looking to build on our YouTube channel, so
Let's
that
do
would be
that.
some great stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
let's do that because that would be great. We'll get a camera rolling.
Good deal.
During the breathing, after the breathing, what you're feeling, and then certainly the ice bath, and then just kind of talk through it, right?
Cool.
Because
I've never done an ice bath. So.
well, look,
Never?
never.
Wow.
Listen,
now
listen.
You've probably done a lot.
I
right?
grew up in Maine,
I've done quite a
swimming in
bit.
lakes and streams and ponds, and they're
this
pretty
past
cold.
Camp, I do a lot of sauna. So I was doing sauna, ice bath, sauna.
Now, so I get a lot of athletes who come in, right, and that's the first thing they'll say, right? Oh, I'm an athlete. I do ice baths, and I'm just like, cool. Then this should be good for you. What I've found is they're not going in up over their
Yeah,
heart.
no, I went there. Yeah, that's what I was doing. Yeah.
That's the ice bath,
Oh, yeah.
right? Once you get
hands
that heart
in,
involved,
hands
right,
in, everything.
right
yeah,
up to your waist is good. It's still going to help you, but the true is
We got a big enough ice bath for this
I
guy?
think we do. I think we do.
You guys just go to Tractor Supply and buy those big
That's
troughs,
what I did.
right?
That's what I got.
Yeah,
That's in
yeah.
my backyard.
That's
yeah.
what we got.
I
That's
got to
what
get
I
one of
got.
those for my backyard, I guess.
Yeah.
But and how many bags of ice do you put in it?
Well,
I'll take care of that.
yeah,
Don't worry about
probably
that.
a bunch.
I know,
a lot,
but
right? A lot.
but listen,
yeah.
listen. Let's just go with the idea that this does help me, and I think it will. I can't say how it would hurt me, and I want to do it. Would you go get one of those 100-pound bags down the street here?
That's what I was doing in the summer. In the winter, I just poured water in it, let it freeze, and I would crack the ice.
There
It was
you go.
perfect.
There you
Just
go.
got to get a if it's your thing, now you just get a meat freezer. Get a
Yeah.
15
right,
cubic
right,
foot
right.
meat freezer.
Yeah, right.
And it stays
plenty
cold
of
When
all
you
the
say
time.
meat freezer, you mean the top lid thing?
Yeah, so the top comes
yeah,
off. You
yeah.
fill it with water and you leave it in.
And then you just shut the top and it stays.
shut the top.
Okay.
It stays
Okay,
cold,
cool.
and then every now and then you'll have to drain it to clean it out. But
Oh, that you go in a meat freezer.
to do the ice bath.
Oh,
thing.
wow.
Not to
Wow.
keep
Way-
the ice in.
Oh, okay.
To actually do the ice bath.
Ah,
So you fill that up with water. It's 15 cubic feet, and
I guess if you do it on a regular
That's a good
basis like
idea.
you do, that
it
saves a lot of work. Yeah.
money and time, man. Getting that ice is just a big pain in the
Yeah,
butt. So,
yeah.
yeah. All right, cool. That's it.
Good deal.
Awesome. Where can everybody find you?
Right here at Frankie Edgar's place. Okay,
Right in the basement.
right in the basement. Leader one
Roger's in the closet.
Roger's in the closet.
Don't come in my closet.
Spying. Leader193.com. That's my website. So everything I do from Wim Hof, the book, and all the stuff I offer from a leadership perspective is on there. My social media platforms are Instagram and Facebook, mostly at Leader193. And that's those are the places you can find me. Super easy to go to the website, though. We've got a million ways to direct you to any questions you have. So thanks for letting me
Awesome.
get
I'm
that
going
out,
to check
guys.
that
Got
out.
it.
Yeah.
Errol, thanks, man.
All right, guys. This was
Look
good
forward
fun.
to this ice bath. With
Yeah,
this
yeah,
big
yeah.
Luke.
Pleasure having you in. Champ of the Tramp, guys. Check us out. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and tell a friend. Someone help me out with my high blood pressure.